It's Losing Her by Max Wild, 10:24 in this lovely morning in South Korea. Welcome back to the Everything GM broadcast with me, the Everything GM. Today, a Star Wars double bill. We're looking at the Episode 3 novelization, doing a bit of reading from that, and then following it up with an analysis of the latest episode of The Mandalorian. Spoiler territory ahead, but for the first half of the stream, you are more than welcome to attend. I hope everyone is having a fantastic day today, whatever time of day it is, morning, afternoon, evening. If you're new, welcome. If you're not new, welcome back. Join the Discord if you haven't already, and let's get into it.
Wonder where I might find some peace of mind.
I got 40 followers on Twitter. That's pretty cool. Especially because Twitter doesn't have like a discovery algorithm anymore. How's everyone doing today? I hope that you're having a wonderful day, and I hope that you're enjoying this the start of the weekend so far. Let's see who's doing things here. Oh. Alrighty. Alrighty. Hello. I'm just gonna quickly watching as MJ responds to Discord. Yes, I'm responding to you. Let's have a chat about acting versus voice acting, because I feel like a lot of people misunderstand what it is. I am someone who would love to be a voice actor, but for now it remains just a passion and not actually a career path. Because the industry is competitive, and I do audition for everything that I do, of everything that I see. Like, I auditioned for, like, there was like a Fallout London, like a Fallout 4 mod for like an overhaul mod for London, and I auditioned for some voices and stuff. I haven't got a response back, which I wasn't expecting, so don't pity me, it's fine. I'm just doing it for fun. But this is the thing. I think a lot of people misunderstand what goes on in the voice acting industry. First of all, much like every other art industry, especially under capitalism, it is incredibly competitive. And so you do have to go above and beyond in order to actually be noticed. And in today's world, with so much saturation, people are already picking established voice actors because they represent safety, and someone who's already worth their money. Voice actors charge more every year because the industry is becoming a little bit more appreciated each year, and that means that they continually have to go with safe bets and voice actors who have already proved themselves, which unfortunately cuts out most voice actors trying to get into the game. And so you end up having to settle for, like, you know, smaller roles, smaller payouts, and so therefore you kind of have to do it for the passion or for the love of doing it. But I think people also misunderstand the nature of voice acting and what it is and what it's supposed to be. That voice acting as a career path, so many people mistake it for just, I do voices. They mistake it for the dude at a party who can do, like, some impressions. I mentioned in the Discord chat, like Gollum, or another one that everyone tries to do is Yoda. What's another one? I can't. For some reason I'm blanking on them, but I used to know them. There's a really funny college humor video, like a really old one, which talks about, like, that one guy at a party who always, like, does the impressions. That used to be me. And then I realized that came from a passion about voice acting, and then I also realized that I had completely misunderstood what voice acting is actually supposed to be. And unfortunately, and surprisingly, the second half of the word voice acting, the phrase voice acting, is just as important as the first. It is acting with your voice. And so you don't have to, the thing that people misunderstand about voice acting is that it is not just you speaking into a microphone. It is you creating everything that your body is supposed to do when you're acting, but with your voice. So you are supposed to create, and this can help you understand the difference between a mediocre voice actor, which is not necessarily a bad thing. Like, I'm no judgment towards these people. A sort of middle of the road, sort of solid voice actor, and a great voice actor. The great voice actors are the ones who are putting on a performance with their voice. They are. It's not just about the voice you can do. No one cares about in the voice acting industry. It doesn't matter whether you sound like yourself or whether you sound like someone else. If you are playing a character who is supposed to sound a certain way, you should do that. In the Seth Rogen example, like, why does he sound like Seth Rogen and not like, Donkey Kong? Because he said, I don't do voices, and therefore it's gonna sound like me if I'm gonna do Donkey Kong. And to me, that also shows a kind of misunderstanding of the voice acting industry, because again, it's not about doing voices, but also it is, Donkey Kong is an iconic character, and if you're trying to do something that pays homage and respect to the franchise of Mario, or the kind of Nintendo multiverse, then you're gonna have to make some concessions, So yeah, there is that as well. However, the great voice actors take their voice and create a scene with it. It is about line delivery. It's about emotional weight. When you do an audition for voice acting, it's not about the accents you can do or the voices you can do, although sometimes that can work in your favor. What is more important is that you are convincing in your performance. If your performance is not up to standard, it doesn't matter how many accents or voices you can do. Your performance, your acting quality has to be there, because it is voice acting. And the acting is more important than how many voices you can do. I would rather have a Donkey Kong that sounds like Seth Rogen, but is a really great delivery of the character, than have some dude who can do a good Donkey Kong voice, but no emotional delivery behind the lines, or no understanding of the character. You know what I mean? The acting is more important than the voice that you can do. And that is why there are some voice actors who people keep hiring, despite the fact that they always sound like themselves. And I'm sure you can think of a few. For example, Steve Blum. Steve Blum probably acts, he's probably a voice actor in, I think, almost every game. Like, I've lost count of the number of games that I've seen Steve Blum acting in. Like he's a number of characters in Star Wars: The Old Republic, for example. In still kind of rolling with Star Wars, he's Zeb from Star Wars Rebels. He plays, I think he plays Sam Fisher in something. He is more classically also Wolverine in many of the Marvel animated series. And all the games as well. He plays that kind of rugged, badass type of character, right? And that is who he is. That is what he does. And yet he is one of the most famous voice actors in the world. And he doesn't really have a variation on his voice. Steve Blum sounds like Steve Blum. But he still has enough acting chops and emotional versatility that he can play the part that he is asked to play while still sounding like himself. And that Steve Blum is a perfect example of how acting is more important than voices in the realm of voice acting. Oh Lord, it's 2:30. Alex, you should go to bed. It's 9:30 in the morning? 9:30 in the night. Oh, okay. I'd love to get into acting in general, both voice and otherwise. It has been a dream of mine for almost my entire life. To be an actor. I've done acting in school. I did musical acting, play acting, and it changed my life. It was so rewarding, and I would love to get into any kind of acting or voice acting at some point. It's one of my dreams to be a voice actor in a Star Wars project. Yeah, that would be the dream for me. Goodness. My voice is still not 100%. Oh, I haven't taken my meds yet. Hold on a sec. My old guitar teacher did some songs for that Fallout London. Really? They think it's the Rick and Morty guy at the party. Oh, yeah, exactly. Yeah. The Justin Roiland who can do everything. Now, don't get me wrong, Justin Roiland is a good voice actor, but he also has the acting chops. So he can still do a good scene with emotional range and delivery range while still being able to do 100 voices. That's the difference. You can distinguish between the voices that he does, because not just because of how different they sound, because of how skilled Justin Roiland is, but also because of how and this is outside all the controversy surrounding him, by the way. We're just talking about him as a professional, but also his ability to deliver the lines differently for different characters. That is the acting part of voice acting, not the voice part. Voice acting is arguably harder than physical acting because you can't rely on body language to convey the emotion. You have to do everything with the voice. So again, this is why it's different. Not necessarily harder, but yes, in that sense, it is harder. Acting has techniques in it that are also, harder, because if you are now involving your body, you have to think about a lot more. And a lot more like wide range of stuff that needs to be moving and going. You can't just keep your body still. That, in that sense, acting is harder. But voice acting becomes a different kind of difficult because all of that body movement has to go into your voice. You have to simulate that body movement with your voice. Chris Pratt. Oh, yeah. Chris Pratt doing like a Chris Pratt sounding voice for Mario. Again, it's not about him doing the Mario voice, but in this case, it is a more important part because the Mario character is so beloved. And if you're trying to pay homage and tribute to the series, then of course you have to at least try and do the voice. You can't sound like yourself. But again, I would rather have, and I mean, look, I say this as someone who's not really like super attached to the Mario universe. I would rather have someone who sounds like Chris Pratt and gives a Mario, like someone who really understands the emotional depth of a character like Mario than someone who can do the Mario voice but cannot put any inflection in the voice at all. It's more about the acting for me. I also find that if you're impersonating a character, as long as the inflections are bang on, the tone can be kind of off. Look at James Arnold Taylor as Obi-Wan. Yeah, exactly. James Arnold Taylor. This is why the emotional weight, the acting, and it is so much better, so much more important than the imitation of a voice. James Arnold Taylor looked at the way, he didn't look at the tone behind Obi-Wan. He saw Ewan McGregor puts on a British accent for Obi-Wan, so I'm going to try a British accent, but his British accent is not perfect at all. He does Americanisms in his British accent all the time, but it doesn't matter because his emotional delivery is there. And that's what keeps him coming back as Obi-Wan Kenobi. That's what makes him believable, because he looked past what Ewan McGregor, like what his accent is, and he looks at more things about his voice, like what Alex says here, his inflections. Obi-Wan makes very specific and like special inflections that make the audience know, oh, that's Obi-Wan Kenobi. And and when I read the Star Wars novelization, I try and implement that into my readings as well when Obi-Wan comes up, because then you know that even if I'm not doing a replication of James Arnold Taylor or Ewan McGregor, you know that it's Obi-Wan, because the inflections and the emotional range are there as much as I can make them. He doesn't sound like Ewan McGregor, but he has the inflections of Ewan McGregor, and he has the style and emotional range of the character of Obi-Wan, and that's what makes the audience instinctively feel that that's Obi-Wan Kenobi. God, my fiance called, so I missed a couple minutes. Oh no. Puts on a British accent as if he's not British. He's Welsh. Scottish. He's Scottish. Ewan McGregor is not British. His natural accent is, I think, Scottish or Welsh. I'm not 100% sure. But he's not English. So he put on an accent for the role of Obi-Wan Kenobi, for sure. All right. With that said, speaking of Star Wars, let's get into the episode 3 novelization, shall we? It's been a hot minute since we've done one of these. I'm gonna take my pills quickly, and then we'll grab onto the we'll jump back into the world of Star Wars Episode 3, shall we? Sounds perfect. Sounds good to me. Hold on a sec. Alright, I'll be right back. Alrighty, let's get back into it. So, I believe where last we left off in our Star Wars adventure. Also, my mic has now started to not, like, it... If I move it like this, it's fine. But if I start going slow, it's starting to make noise. And it's really... Like, I wish I knew why. Like, it can't be rusting, right? It's not even, like, 6 months old. So this really irritates me. Anyway, maybe it's dust. Maybe it's getting dusted up and it should do something else. Yeah, I felt like that was wrong, so I looked it up after sending it to Lodi Scottish. Yeah. So he's also putting on an accent for that. Okay. We're going to get in here. Last we left off in the Star Wars, in the Star Wars thing, we learned about how Palpatine has sneakily manipulated Anakin to reject anything the Jedi tells him. Just on the face of it. Because Palpatine has created this idea that the Jedi... He's created this enmity of the Jedi within Anakin and stoked Anakin's already present fears about the Jedi preventing him from saving Padme, particularly in Episode 3, which is like his number one motivation. And so, yeah, here we go. Now, we're going to get that scene in Episode 3 where Obi-Wan and Mace Windu and Yoda are rocking through Coruscant in the LAAT gunship, and Mace Windu talks about how he doesn't trust Anakin. We're going to see how that gets portrayed in this book. So here we go. I'm wondering if I should do any music for this. Usually the music doesn't really match the vibe. Let's see. It's got to be royalty free though. Royalty free. Should we go intrigue? Royalty-free intrigue music. Playlists. Nah. It's too specific. Anyway, we'll just go. The gunship streaked through the capital's sky. Obi-Wan stared past Yoda and Mace Windu, out through the gunship's window at the vast deployment platform and the swarm of clones who were loading the assault cruiser at the far end. "You weren't there," he said. You didn't see his face. I think we have done a terrible thing. We don't always have the right answer, Mace Windu said. Sometimes there isn't a right answer.
Know how important your friendship with young Anakin is to you. I do.
Yoda, too, stared out toward the stark angles of the assault cruiser being loaded for the counter-invasion of Kashyyyk. He stood, leaning on his gimmer stick, as though he did not trust his legs.
Allow such attachments to pass out of one's life. A Jedi must.
Another man, even another Jedi, might have resented the rebuke, but Obi-Wan only sighs. I suppose he is the chosen one, after all. The prophecy says he was born to bring balance to the Force, but the words trailed off. He couldn't remember what he'd been about to say. All he could remember was the look on Anakin's face.
Yes. Always in motion, the future is.
I know my voice for Yoda changes all the time. It's because I'm sick. I'm sorry. Oh, jeez. Yoda lifted his head and his eyes narrowed to thoughtful slits.
And the prophecy? Misread? It could have been.
Mace looked even grimmer than usual. Since the fall of Darth Bane more than a millennium ago, there have been hundreds of thousands of Jedi. Hundreds of thousands of Jedi feeding the light with each work of their hands, with each breath, with every beat of their hearts, bringing justice, building civil society, radiating peace, acting out of selfless love for all living things. And in all these 1,000 years there have only been 2 Sith at any time. Only 2. Jedi create light, but the Sith do not create darkness. They merely use the darkness that is always there, that has always been there. Greed and jealousy, aggression and lust and fear. These are all natural to sentient beings. The legacy of the jungle. Our inheritance from the dark. I disagree with this take. I'm sorry, Master Windu, but I'm not sure I follow you. Are you saying, to follow your metaphor, that the Jedi have cast too much light? From what I have seen these past years, the galaxy has not become all that bright a place. All I am saying is that we don't know. We don't even truly understand what it means to bring balance to the Force. We have no way of anticipating what this may involve.
An infinite mystery is the Force,
Yoda said softly.
The more we learn, the more we discover how much we do not know.
That's true. So you both feel it too, Obi-Wan said. The words hurt him. You both can feel that we have turned some invisible corner.
In motion are the events of our time. Approach the crisis does.
Yes. Mace interlaced his fingers and squeezed until his knuckles popped. But we're in a spice mine without a glow rod. If we stop walking, we'll never reach the light. And what if the light just isn't there? Obi-Wan asked. What if we get to the end of this tunnel and find only night?
Faith we must have. Trust in the will of the Force. What other choice is there?
Obi-Wan accepted this with a nod. But still, when he thought of Anakin, dread began to curdle below his heart. I should have argued more strongly in council today. You think Skywalker won't be able to handle this? Mace Windu said. I thought you had more confidence in his abilities. I trust him with my life, Obi-Wan said simply. And that is precisely the problem. The other 2 Jedi Masters watched him silently while he tried to summon the proper words. Okay, I'm going to stop here for a second. The Sith do not create darkness. Bullshit. Bullshit. If they're going to talk about how, like, we don't know what creating balance to the Force is, yes, we do. We know what it is. Bringing balance to the Force is not the centrist equal light, equal darkness bullshit that you think it is, right? There's this weird meme that people seem to take unironically more and more, and I really just want to stamp it out immediately. That, you know, it's this meme of like Anakin, there were thousands of Jedi and only 2 Sith. Now Anakin created Yoda and Obi-Wan and then 2 Sith, and there you go, balance achieved. It's so, first of all, Obi-Wan and Yoda were not the only Jedi who survived. So immediately, is just not a thing at all. But secondly, to go into the actual argument and the actual truth of the matter, balance is what Luke described in episode 8 in The Last Jedi. He said, yes, there is nature. There is a light and a darkness. There's an ecosystem to nature, and therefore an ecosystem to the Force. But without even getting into the Force, in nature, we have life, we have growth, we have peace, we have prosperity. And then on the other side, in nature, we have death, we have decay, we have, we have, I guess, hardship and, what's the word? Not prosperity. It's like adversity. We have adversity, right? None of that is corruption. Corruption is not a natural thing. It is by its definition a corruption. It is a warping of the natural order to create something that is not natural. It is not natural to be greedy to the point of corruption. As much as people try to convince you that humans are naturally greedy, we are not. Life naturally creates this balance. And then in the world of Star Wars, you put in the Force. The Force maintains this balance. The Force does not shun the darkness in nature. Death and decay and adversity are natural parts of life and therefore natural parts of the Force. But the dark side is not part of that darkness. It's not part of death, decay, adversity. It takes the balance and corrupts it. It creates more darkness by taking the darkness that is there and twisting it to something that it should not be. And this is where Mace Windu is completely wrong, in my opinion. This kind of these emotions, look, these emotions like jealousy, aggression, lust, and fear, these are natural to sentient beings. I'm gonna give him that and say that to some extent, yes, but they are not. But Mace Windu is so wrong when he cuts off any kind of education or emotional intelligence about these feelings and relegates them to the legacy of the jungle, and that we should kind of rise above these things. If they are a part of us, we should accept them as such and learn to be the master of them, not to dominate and eliminate them, but to welcome them, embrace them as part of us, and learn to control them and learn to be their master rather than let them master us. And so with the Force, it oversees this entire balance. And the dark side does not exist naturally. The Sith corrupt what is natural to create something abominable. That is the point. To restore balance is to destroy the Sith completely. Now there's a difference. There are two things I want to talk about. First of all, there's a difference between destroying the Jedi and destroying the light. Just like Luke says in The Last Jedi, the Jedi do not have a monopoly on what is light and what is good. The Jedi are an institution, an organization, and for the last 1,000 years in this time period, they are an institution of the Republic, which is capitalist and federalist, and as a result is subject to all of its own corruptions and manipulations as well. And so the Jedi have the same weaknesses of the Republic by being inherently tied to it. And that is why when the Jedi dies, the light doesn't die. Because the Force exists above some kind of institution. It is a spiritual thing that underpins the universe. The Jedi do not do that. The Jedi try to interpret the will of the Force to do its bidding, to keep maintaining the balance. But Their biggest mistake in all of Star Wars history has been to involve themselves more intimately with an institution like the Republic, thereby becoming themselves an institution and therefore suffering under the same problems that the Republic will always suffer under. The Jedi still provide some of the best defense that the Republic can ask for when a conflict arises from people like the Sith or Mandalorians or any kind of bad guy like the Separatists who want to come and invade and like take away what little good that they've managed to build up. And so without the Jedi, the Republic is in big trouble. But without the Jedi, the Force is still there. The light side of the Force still remains. That is the great truth of the Star Wars universe. That's the great truth of our universe too. If our institutions fall, the light that is in us as human beings will still remain. Of course it will. We are not tied to institutions or systems. We rise above them. We're supposed to, anyway. We're supposed to strive for more. That's what's natural. And again, to be a little bit more existentialist with it, making the it's natural argument is kind of bullshit from the start, because it's not as though, like in the Star Wars universe, you have space travel, you know? Like, whatever is natural is such a weird argument to come at it with, because people will often talk about, like, it's natural to, I don't know. You can say anything from people. People make the weirdest arguments, like it's natural to like do survival of the fittest or whatever, as if we as humans have not gone beyond that and should. We have strived our entire lives to ascend, to transcend nature and to ascend above the kind of the sort of non-sentient consciousness aspects of nature that make us not question why things happen. The mere fact that we suddenly questioned why things happen and then evolved beyond that means that we ascended above our natural baser instincts. But then you could then extend the nature argument to be like, if we were always meant to question why, then everything we create is also a natural thing. The computer that I have in front of me is a natural thing because who created it was a natural person. And so this argument that it is what nature intended, to me, is a very, very, very shaky one. And so I wouldn't really use it in a lot of my arguments. Anyway, so that's what I'm goodness. That's what I'm thinking of when I look at this paragraph from Mace Windu. I do think he's wrong. I think what he gets right is that these negative emotions are part of us. But the Jedi have squashed those. They believe they are masters of them, but what they've really done is just suppressed them. And so it's the tale as old as time. Don't talk about emotions, and they'll come back in ugly ways later, and they'll corrupt you. And this is exactly what we're seeing here. I'm a broken record when I talk about communicating about your emotions. This is just another example of that. Hello, taters. Wild? That's great. You feeling wild today? Oh, goodness. Dum McGee here. Forgot to take the audio device from my headphones to my TV. That sounds like a bad idea. Wondering why the stream was really quiet. Just loop my Mando theme until the end of time. I can't. It's also copyrighted. Call Akil and get Africa Yoda going. I would love to get African Yoda going. The only way to create true balance is to eradicate darkness. It's not... Okay. I'm gonna nitpick your words a little bit. It's not to eradicate darkness. It's to eradicate corruption. The way to achieve balance is to accept the darkness, the natural darkness, the negative emotions that are there and present in everyone that they're supposed to be. Like hatred and fear and longing and all of those negative emotions. Those are fine. We can accept them as part of who we are. But as long as we feed them and use them to create corruption, that must be eradicated. Not the darkness itself. Because without the darkness, there can be no light. That natural balance, that's what I talk about when I talk about a natural balance. And if you are ever someone who takes it so far to think that there needs to be an equal amount of Sith and Jedi in the world to create true balance, then you need to really rethink that. because it's not how it works. Here we go. Evil in smaller numbers is infinitely more powerful than truth. I'm going to say louder, not more powerful. And I don't think that the part of the main reason that Palpatine was able to do what he could is because he was loud enough that he could... The Jedi at this time period did not represent the great truth. They were corrupt, they had problems, they were prideful and complacent. And that meant that there was no fierce guardian of truth that Palpatine had to fight against. He did not have as nearly as challenging a fight as he would have had the Jedi been doing their job, as they should be doing. But his job was made easier by the fact that the Jedi had lost their way. And that is why he was more powerful, because the Jedi did not represent that truth. So I don't believe that evil is more powerful than truth. I believe it is I believe it is evil that is louder than truth, and it makes us want to hear it more, especially if you form part of a system that rewards the hearing of evil, the constant publication of evil things. The anti-trans movement is a fantastic example. They're massively outnumbered, yet they're so much louder. What do you mean? Like the people who are anti-trans? Not fully eradicate darkness, more overwhelming and all-consuming, corrupt darkness that festers and breaks people. That's, yeah. You're right there. The anti-trans movement is massively outnumbered. Okay. Yes, they're louder. That doesn't mean they're more powerful. It depends on like how you define power. Because this kind of, I will say the reality about the anti-trans movement is that, unfortunately, what we are trying to do as both, if you're a trans person or just an ally to one, or to the movement in general, what our fight is to get people to care about it. Because as a minority that is like relatively newly entering the discussion compared to like other forms of minorities, you know what I mean? The gender conversation is something that more people should care about, but a lot of people just don't think about it in their day-to-day lives, right? It's not that they are actively against it, it's that they don't really give a shit. Not in a negative way, just in a neutral way. And so by making them care about it, you create more voices in your favor. The problem is, if the opposition is so loud, the people who don't give a shit are more likely to, when they start opening themselves up to these conversations, they're more likely to hear the loud voice first than the soft voice preaching goodness. And so that's how they kind of get people more to that side. They're also very manipulative on that side. They like to start you off with like moderate takes about like how life should be and like the way we should be conducting ourselves, and arguments about promiscuity and like drag shows to children and things like that. And they use that as a pipeline to get you into more serious stuff. But it's it doesn't mean that they're more powerful. It just means, like you said, that they're louder. And yeah, I think it's an important distinction to make. It might have a very similar result that at the moment they do have more power than us. Or it may seem like they do, but see, I don't think they do. Because I think it depends on how you define what power is. I think there's some desperation on that side of the argument. I think they're desperate to hold on to a system that's destroying itself. All right, let's get back to Star Wars. So, an infinite mystery. Yoda speaking bars as usual. Yoda is one of my favorite characters. The more we learn, the more we discover how much we do not know. I have said this so many times in my daily life. If this is the true definition of wisdom, wisdom is the feeling of knowing more, and at the same time as learning more, realizing how much you still have to learn and know. That is wisdom. Knowing that your knowledge expands to about this much, and the universe's knowledge is not this. It's the size of the universe compared to this. So yeah, that to me, that is wisdom. All right, here we go. So he says, I should have argued more strongly. And they say, Skywalker's not going to be able to do this. And Obi-Wan says, I trust him with my life. And that's the problem. So, here we go. For Anakin, Obi-Wan said at length, there's nothing more important than friendship. He's the most loyal man I've ever met. Loyal beyond reason, in fact. Despite all I've tried to teach him about the sacrifices that are the heart of being a Jedi, he will never, I think, truly understand. He looked over at Yoda. Master Yoda, you and I have been close since I was a boy, an infant. Yet if ending this war 1 week sooner, 1 day sooner, were to require that I sacrifice your life, you know I would.
As you should,
Yoda said.
as I would yours, young Obi-Wan, as any Jedi would any other in the cause of peace.
Any Jedi, Obi-Wan said, except Anakin. Yoda and Mace exchanged glances, both thoughtfully grim. Obi-Wan guessed they were remembering the times Anakin had violated orders, the times he had put at risk entire operations, the lives of thousands, the control of whole planetary systems to save a friend. More than once, in fact, to save Obi-Wan. I think, Obi-Wan said carefully, that abstractions like peace don't mean much to him. He's loyal to people, not to principles. And he expects loyalty in return. He will stop at nothing to save me, for example, because he thinks I would do the same for him. Mace and Yoda gazed at him steadily, and Obi-Wan had to lower his head. Because, he admitted reluctantly, he knows I would do the same for him.
Understand exactly where your concern lies. I do not.
Yoda's green eyes had gone softly sympathetic.
Named must your fear be. Before banish it you can. Do you fear that perform his task he cannot?
No, that's not it at all. I'm firmly convinced that Anakin can do anything, except betray a friend. What we have done to him today. But that is what Jedi are, Mace Windu said. That is what we have pledged ourselves to. Selfless service. Obi-Wan turned to stare once more toward the assault ship that would carry Yoda and the clone battalions to Kashyyyk, but he could only see Anakin's face. If he asked me to spy on you, do you think I will do it? Yes, he said slowly. That's why I don't think he will ever trust us again. He found his eyes turning unaccountably hot, and his vision swam with unshed tears. And I'm not entirely sure he should. That's a good line. I think Obi-Wan finds himself as a character in the center of a storm, and he feels completely powerless to stop it. And he also feels responsible for some of its elements as well. And he understands so much about how everything works, but I don't think he has the confidence to see it through. I don't think he's committed to the Jedi ideals, and that keeps him from knowing when to break from them, and knowing when to do the right thing when the system is telling you not to. I think Obi-Wan has too much faith in the Jedi principles, which is a good thing if the Jedi are doing the right thing. But Obi-Wan as the perfect Jedi is such a good person fundamentally. He wants to be a good person, but I don't think that he is brave enough or confident enough in his own convictions to stand up for what he believes here. He doesn't think this is the right thing to talk to Anakin about spying on the Chancellor. He knows, because he knows Anakin more than anyone, which is ironic because Anakin is now looking at Obi-Wan like an enemy. After Obi-Wan asked Anakin to go and spy on the Chancellor, the bridge between them is crumbling. It has nearly collapsed. And And yet Obi-Wan, the reality remains that Obi-Wan is still the person who knows Anakin better than anyone else. So it's just such a great tragedy that he lacks the confidence to actually stand up to this and say, no, we will not do this to him. Because yes, he might be rash and he might do stupid things and he might not have his emotions in check, but we didn't really do much to help that. And while we didn't create him, he's created himself. We can't do something that's going to push him away from us even more. He feels ostracized already. This non-promotion to master has created a gap between him and the Jedi that is almost impossible to repair. And then we did something more on top of that. We asked him to spy on his father figure. And if we are foolish enough to think that that is not going to completely destroy his trust in us, as the only people who really know him from the time he was a boy, if we can't see that, then we have lost our way as well. I do think that on some deep level, Obi-Wan believes that. And I think he's trying to say it very carefully around the Jedi. They're 100% desperate, but that's a discussion for some other time. Yeah. Oh, from the earlier conversation, for sure. Oh, goodness. This is great. It's awesome. Right, part 12. Oh, here we go. Okay. Are we going to do like... Oh! It's Padme and Anakin time. We're going for ERP. ERP, that's right. It's Star Wars erotica. Doom ba doom 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 doom. Star Wars erotica. Doom 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 doom. Padme and Anakin banging in their apartment. I hope so. Here we go. Wait, I need to finish my sweet. Spamming emojis makes me feel like I'm in a real streaming chat, you know? Also taters. Consistency. Did you just eat a mint in preparation for reading the smut? Well, it was a fruit tip. It's like a jelly. I just needed a break. After the spicy time, I do the sleeping. Good idea. I would, but I'm watching a video of a guy carving a wooden Mando helmet. That sounds amazing. All right, here we go. It's smut time. Not from a Jedi. That's the name of the thing. Are we gonna get the big we gonna get the opera house scene? Oh, here we go. The sunset over Galactic City was stunning tonight. Enough particulates from the fires remained in the capital planet's atmosphere to splinter the light of its distant blue-white sun into a prismatic smear across multi-layered clouds. Anakin barely noticed. On the broad, curving veranda that doubled as the landing deck for Padme's apartment, he watched from the shadows as Padme stepped out of her speeder and graciously accepted Captain Typho's good night. As Typho flew the vehicle off towards the immense residential tower's speeder park, she dismissed her two handmaidens and sent C-3PO on some busy work errand, then turned to lean on the veranda's balcony right where Anakin had leaned last night. She gazed out on the sunset, but he gazed only at her. This was all he needed, to be here, to be with her, to watch the sunset bring a blush to her ivory skin. If not for his dreams, he'd withdraw from the Order today, now. The lost 20 would be the lost 21. Let the scandal come, it wouldn't destroy their lives. Not their real lives. It would only destroy the lives they'd had before each other. those separate years that now meant nothing at all. And this is the difference between Padme and Anakin. She doesn't feel that way about her life. He said softly, "Beautiful, isn't it?" She jumped as if he'd pricked her with a needle. "Anakin!" "Sorry." He smiled fondly as he moved out from the shadows. "I didn't mean to startle you." She held one hand pressed to her chest as though to keep her heart from leaping out. God. No, it's all right. Anakin, you shouldn't be out here. It's still daylight. I couldn't wait, Padme. I had to see you. He took her in his arms. "Tonight is forever from now. How am I supposed to live that long without you?" Oh my. It's so creepy. Her hand went from her chest to his. "But we're in full view of 1,000,000 people, and you're a very famous man. Let's go inside." He drew her back from the edge of the veranda, but made no move to enter the apartment. "How are you feeling?" Her smile was radiant as Tatooine's primary. Their election? As she took his flesh hand and pressed it to the soft fullness of her belly. He keeps kicking. "He?" Anakin asked mildly. "I thought you'd ordered your medical droid not to spoil the surprise." "Oh, I didn't get this from the MD. It's my..." Her smile went softly sly. "Motherly intuition." Ugh. He felt a sudden pulse against his palm and laughed. "Motherly intuition, huh? With a kick that hard, definitely a girl." She laid her head against his chest. "Anakin, let's go inside." He nuzzled her gleaming coils of hair. "I can't stay. I'm on my way to meet with the Chancellor." "Yes, I heard about your appointment to the council. Anakin, I'm so proud of you." He lifted his head, an instant scowl gathering on his forehead. Why did she have to bring that up? "There's nothing to be proud of," he said. "This is just political maneuvering between the council and the Chancellor. I got caught in the middle, that's all." "But to be on the council at your age..." "They put me on the council because they had to. Because he told them to. Once the Senate gave him control of the Jedi." His voice lowered toward a growl. "And because they think they can use me against him." Padme's eyes went oddly remote and thoughtful. "Against him?" she echoed. "The Jedi don't trust him?" This, by the way, to be on the council at your age is literally what Obi-Wan said to him. And this sows the seeds of Anakin, unfortunately, taking his mistrust from the council and putting it into Padme. That doesn't mean much. They don't trust me either. Anakin's mouth compressed to a thin, bitter line. They'll give me a chair in the council chamber, but that's as far as it'll go. They won't accept me as a master. Her gaze returned from that thoughtful distance, and she smiled up at him. Patience, my love. In time they'll recognize your ability. And that is Palpatine's words. So interesting how she's like the line between the two of them. They already recognize their abilities. They fear my abilities, he said bitterly. But this isn't even about that. Like I said, it's a political game. Anakin, I don't know what's happening to the Order, but whatever it is, I don't like it. He shook his head. This war is destroying everything the Republic is supposed to stand for. I mean, what are we fighting for anyway? What about all this is worth saving? Padme nodded sadly, disengaging from Anakin's arms and drifting away. Sometimes I wonder if we're on the wrong side. The wrong side? Do you think everything I've accomplished has been for nothing? He frowned at her. You can't mean that. She turned from him, speaking to the vast airway beyond the veranda's edge. What if the democracy we're fighting for no longer exists? What if the Republic itself has become the very evil we've been fighting to destroy? This again. Anakin irritably waved off her words. I've been hearing that garbage ever since Geonosis. I never thought I'd hear it from you. A few seconds ago, you were saying almost the same thing. Where would the Republic be without Palpatine? I don't know, she said. But I'm not sure it will be worse than where we are. All the danger, all the suffering, all the killing, all my friends who gave their lives, all for nothing? He bit down on his temper. Everybody complains about Palpatine having too much power, but nobody offers a better alternative. Who should be running the war? The Senate? You're in the Senate. You know those people. How many of them do you trust? All I know is that things are going wrong here. Our government is headed in exactly the wrong direction. You know it too. You just said so. I didn't mean that. I'm tired of this, that's all. This political garbage. Sometimes I'd rather just be back out on the front lines. At least out there I know who the bad guys are. I'm becoming afraid, she replied in a bitter undertone, that I might know who the bad guys are here too. His eyes narrowed. You're starting to sound like a separatist. Anakin, the whole galaxy knows now that Count Dooku is dead. This is the time we should be pursuing a diplomatic resolution to the war, but instead, the fighting is intensifying. Palpatine's your friend. He might listen to you when you see him tonight. Ask him in the name of simple decency to offer a ceasefire. His face went hard. Is that an order? She blinked. What? Do I get any say in this? He stalked towards her. Does my opinion matter? What if I don't agree with you? What if I think Palpatine's way is the right way? Anakin, hundreds of thousands of beings are dying every day. It's a war, Padme. We didn't ask for it, remember? You were there. Maybe we should have pursued a diplomatic resolution in that beast arena. She shrank away from what she saw on his face, blinking harder, brows drawn together. I was only asking. Everyone is only asking. Everyone wants something from me, and I'm the bad guy if they don't get it. He spun away from her, cloak whirling, and found himself at the veranda's edge, leaning on the rail. The Durasteel piping groaned in his mechanical grip. I'm sick of this, he muttered. I'm sick of all of it. He didn't hear her come to him. The rush of air cars through the lanes below the veranda drowned her footsteps. He didn't see the hurt on her face, or the hint of tears in her eyes, but he could feel them in the tentative softness of her touch when she stroked his arm, and he could hear them in her hesitant voice. Anakin, what is it? What is it really? He shook his head. He couldn't look at her. Nothing that's your fault, he said. Nothing you can help. Don't shut me out, Anakin. Let me try. You can't help me. He stared down through dozens of crisscross lanes of traffic down toward the invisible bedrock of the planet. I'm trying to help you. He'd seen something in her eyes when he'd mentioned the Council and Palpatine. He'd seen it. What aren't you telling me? Her hand went still, and she did not answer. I can feel it, Padme. I sense you're keeping a secret. Oh? She said softly, lightly. That's funny. I was thinking the same about you. He just kept staring down over the rail into the invisible distance below. Okay, I have to stop for this second because this is just... whoa! Tension. Okay, so a few things. Like, it's... yeah, it's... okay, so there are a few things that we can do here. So, his response to her simple request is so triggering. Yeah. Anakin, my God, stop talking and think. Yeah. Okay, so there's a lot of stuff going on here. So remember, when characters speak to each other, they carry the context of everything else that's happened to them and they bring it into these conversations. If they're not good enough at regulating their emotions. Padme is much better at this. In fact, she's good at it. Anakin is not. We know this. He can't regulate emotions. So what Anakin is doing right now is he's taking the emotions of Palpatine asks him, Palpatine kind of uses his political stuff and puts Anakin on the council. The Jedi then insult Anakin by not making him a master, and then they go further, destroy his trust in them, and tell him to spy on the Chancellor. And now Padme, he is coming home and he wants to get away from this. He wants to not think about this when he's with Padme. He wants a break. His mind needs a break. And Padme asks him to do something else, which is regarding Palpatine. Now, bear in mind, Anakin is kind of an idiot, okay? Anakin's political views are not educated. He is not an educated person when it comes to politics. He does not understand why a dictatorship is bad. He, like, in episode 2, he literally talks about, like, authoritarianism, and he says that's a good thing. And then he, like, brushes it off as a joke, but it's, like, the most massive red flag for me about him. And Padme still, for some reason, is still with him. But he still thinks this. This hasn't changed. He is the kind of person who finds he doesn't have the emotional intelligence to get into, like, what's right and wrong. So he would rather be on the front lines of a war killing people, and then he doesn't have to think about it. That's the most dangerous part of it. He would rather be told to kill, like, on the front lines of a war by someone than involve himself in these politics, these pesky things. Like, the Senate's all corrupt anyway, so I might as well just stay on the front lines and kill things and just not think about it, right? He wants to be a pawn. He wants to be told what to do, right? But then at the same time, in other ways, he is obsessed with being in control. So he has no way of, like, reconciling these two conflicting things. And then here comes Padme to ask Palpatine, someone he's already been asked to spy on, someone who's already at the center of this entire shitstorm, to ask him to, like, negotiate with the separatists. And for Anakin, that is too much. It takes the dissonance that his two warring sides are conflicting about and puts it right in the center and creates this kind of paradox inside him. And he reacts like that. And this whole, like, you're sounding like a separatist is such a dismissive line. It is very much his intention to say, please, can we not talk about this? But he can't do that. Because really deep down, hang on. I'm going to use this as an example. So first of all, she talks about the council and she tries to say something that is, like, supportive, right? And obviously, why did she have to bring that up? She doesn't know that he feels bad about this. He just assumes that she has to know because he's so selfish that the world doesn't exist outside his own mental space, right? So again, to be on the council at your age, she uses exactly the same line that Obi-Wan was going to use, and so that triggers him as well, right? And all Padme is doing is asking him questions and supporting him. And then when she does this is Palpatine's words, because he's said this to him a lot of times. And then he responds like he would against Palpatine, and he says, they're already not trusting me. And his things only grow. Unfortunately, Padme is doomed to constantly remind Anakin of either Palpatine, and therefore his opposition to the Jedi, his growing opposition and mistrust, or the Jedi themselves, and stokes his enmity towards them. Because, like I've said many times before, he's already made up his mind about all of this. So whatever she says is just going to remind him of more of that. First of all, then this is a real, like, smooth brain moment. He says, this war is destroying everything. What about all of this is worth saving? He has literally said, what is left of the Republic? And then she says the same thing. And suddenly coming from her, it's not valid? It's only valid if he's the one who says it? That's a really, really, really weird thing. What about all of this is worth saving? And then she says, sometimes I wonder if we're on the wrong side and everything I've accomplished has been for nothing. And then she says, What if the Republic no longer exists, etc., which is pretty much what about all of this is worth saving, just like in a different like conception or conceptualization. And Anakin hears that and goes, oh, well, screw you. Why would you think that? Obviously, we're fighting for the Republic. But he's literally just said it. And she calls him out on it as well. And she says, you're saying the exact same thing. But then he connects it to Palpatine. And as soon as she even hints and engages with Anakin about Palpatine in a way that sounds like challenge, or let me put it this way, sounds like anything but 100% Palpatine support, he's not on the same side. Because Palpatine has already got his hooks into Anakin. He's already there. And then he starts thinking about this. He says, all the danger, all the suffering, all the killing, who gave their lives, all for nothing. The truth is, it has all been for nothing. But that is not Padme's fault. That is Palpatine's fault. It has been all for nothing. Palpatine orchestrated the entire Clone Wars. Every death in the Clone Wars is preventable. Every death is unnecessary. Because the entire war was a sham for Palpatine to take power. And, of course, no one knows that. But Anakin has this idea that if we start thinking, we've started fighting a war, and now, when the war is reaching a pivotal moment, the fighting is intensifying where we should be suing for peace and trying to end the war. And Anakin is thinking, or Padme starts to think a little bit more systemically about it and goes, what is the Republic becoming because of this war? And Anakin sees that and goes, are you kidding? You're thinking about, you're questioning our system now once we fought and died over it? And it's just such a short-sighted view. It is very easy to get caught up in the lives that have been lost in maintenance of a system and let that be justification that the system needs to continue. But that's not a good enough justification. The fact that lives have been lost in furtherance of a system does not inherently make that system good or worth continuing just for the sake of those lives that have been lost. It's about more than that. And Padme is thinking on that level, and Anakin is just not. He's thinking like a brute. He's basically going, people have died for this, and therefore I've got to make sure that what they died for is not worth nothing. And the only way that I can think to make sure of that is to keep killing people in their name and to keep the system going. Because otherwise, if I do anything else, I will feel like they died for nothing. Meanwhile, they died for what they believed in. If people lost their lives, it's because they believed in goodness. And if the Republic no longer has that goodness, then they didn't die for the Republic. They died for goodness. And so the ideals supersede and transcend the system that is supposed to represent them. Because if the system stops representing that, the ideal doesn't go away. It's still here. It's like saying if the Jedi die, the light dies. It's just not true. And then Anakin brings up something that is unfortunate. He says, everyone complains about Palpatine having too much power, but nobody offers a better alternative. And that, to me, is a mark of the system not working. The system has not worked since the beginning of the war, and that puts everyone in an impossibly difficult position to the extent that all they have to do is just keep going, because Palpatine's basically already won at this point. He just needs to wait for the war to kind of run its course. He's got one final gambit to do. He's got to solidify all the pieces that he's put into place. The time to stop him was years ago, before the war. The fact that the war has started, he's had a few close calls, that's for sure. I'm not going to diminish the sacrifices that people made to try and unravel what he did, like in the Clone Wars, like Fives and Rex and Ahsoka and all those people. But at this point, it has become almost impossible to challenge him at all, and he has ensured that, so that the people feel like there's no alternative. But the alternative is suing for peace. The better alternative that people are offering is suing for peace. But then Anakin says the true fact, and that is that the reason Palpatine was elected is because the Senate was too busy fighting to actually get something done regarding the war or regarding the stuff before the war. And that shows problems with the system. And Anakin says the solution to the system is to have one person in charge of everything. Rather than he sees democracy failing because of federal capitalism or late stage capitalism. The Republic is still capitalist. He sees the Senate fall under the weight of capitalism and how democracy cannot fight it without those many checks and balances in place. And instead of blaming the way that the economic system has been structured to undermine the system of democracy, he just blames democracy and says, okay, the solution is not democracy then. And that's just unfortunate. So yeah. And then, of course, Padme can't talk to him about this because then he starts to do this. And what she is doing here is gauging his response. And I think what she's doing deep down right now is saying, depending on how he responds, I'm either going to tell him about these people who are rebelling against the Chancellor or thinking of doing it, or I'm going to hide this from him. And I think after his response here, this is what solidifies her choice to hide this from him. And you can see this scene, you can see them break apart. You can see them become more distant from each other. It's very sad. And then there's this bullshit that comes up. She's asking him to go to Palpatine and ask a surrender, and Anakin takes all of the pressure that he's been felt, which is valid, by the way. His pressure is valid. Palpatine manipulates him, the Council manipulates him, and he's just so sick and tired of it. So that part is valid. But then he takes it out on Padme, who just wants peace. And she's a good she's not asking him to manipulate anyone or spy on anyone. She's desperate. She's saying, please just, none of this makes sense. I don't want to fight this war anymore. And unfortunately, he then takes his very valid concerns and weaponizes them against her. And uses her because she is unfortunately the person who is closest to him and his heart, and therefore she is the easiest target to lash out against. And if you are a person who doesn't who lets their emotions take control, when you inevitably lash out, or if you are someone who suppresses their emotions, when you inevitably lash out, you will lash out against people who deserve it the least. And you will lash out against people who care about you the most, or whom you care about the most, and you will hurt them. And that is the most unfortunate consequence of suppressing these kinds of things. All right. Anyway. There's a lot of nuance going on in this scene. There's a lot of complicated feelings and conflicting emotions, but I think, all the kind of main takeaway from this scene is just that it's sad, and the main theme of this scene is that she is, Padme and Anakin are becoming estranged, essentially, especially here. When he feels she's keeping a secret, he's like, I can feel you keeping a secret. And she's like, I can feel you're keeping a secret. And that's the moment where they're like, they just start to distance themselves. All right. Here we go. Okay. If no one agrees with me, they should be forced to. Anakin slightly paraphrased. I mean, yeah, that's precisely what he was talking about in episode 2. Padme as a politician in that moment should have pegged it then and there. I mean, considering we're talking about Anakin and Padme smut, interesting choice of words. But also, yes, I agree with you. I think she should have challenged him right there and gone, tell me, Anakin, what do you mean by that? You want a dictatorship? That's kind of weird. But they're having a casual conversation. She doesn't want it to turn into like an intense one. Love does crazy things. It's really true. Wrecker has more emotional maturity than Anakin, and Wrecker was bred. Wrecker was bred to be a brute. Wrecker is bred. Yeah, when you say Wrecker was bred, I got what you mean immediately. Okay, but make sure my friends didn't die in vain, so I keep killing is a thing people do in real life with war. Absolutely. Absolutely. This is a justification that we use all the time in real life to continue real life conflicts. We eliminate any possibility of ending the conflict because people have died in service to the conflict. And it just like, yeah, it's so stupid, but you can also understand the emotions behind it. But yeah, anyway, my issue is like, he was talking about peace 10 minutes ago with Obi-Wan. Yeah, that too. That's a good point. That's a great point, Taters. He was literally talking about how this war, like, we should not be fighting this war. And now Padme is talking about it, and he's like, oh, well, fuck you then, I guess. It's so irritating. Anakin was always almost destined to break at some point. The amount of pressure on him being the chosen one must have been horrible. Absolutely. We can talk for ages about that. I do not... Okay, I'm going to go into this then. Just for a second. Just for a few minutes. I do not use the word intelligent to describe people anymore. I have eliminated the word smart from my vocabulary. Because I believe two things. First of all, intelligence is broad and diverse and depends on a whole number of factors. But also, depending on how you define intelligence, you could be doing it in a racist way, or a sexist way, or a homophobic way, or however you want. Mainly racist and sexist, to be honest, when it comes to intelligence. But yeah, intelligence has been used as a weapon to divide people. And I have eliminated it from my compliment vocabulary. When I call someone, when I say, when I look at someone and I go, I think you're smart. Instead, think of what about them you think is intelligent and say, do you pick up on concepts easily? Are you able to see the connections between things easily? Do you write well? Do you read well? Do you speak well? All of those things are different kinds of intelligence. They rely on different parts of your brain. And that is why to call someone smart is almost... is a very, very unfortunate reduction of who they could be. And so I do not call people smart or intelligent anymore because I don't think it means anything. I think when we call... And also, it runs a risk. So there's a second thing to this. When you call someone smart, number one, it doesn't really do much. It's not really a compliment. In the realm of good, someone feels smart, right? Oh, that's cool. I'm smart, whatever. The problem is it can create a complex within them, especially if your society is based on competition, which many aspects of our society aren't, and are. And so when you call someone smart more than once, consistently, you say, "Oh, that person is so intelligent. Wow, that child is really smart." They create this complex within themselves that turns into an expectation. And that turns into a pressure, which becomes an anxiety, which becomes a real fear, and which creates trauma within them if they don't meet up to that standard of being intelligent and being smart, because we see that as going straight to who we are. Being intelligent is not something that you work at. You are given this idea of intelligence. We treat... The way we have defined intelligence historically has been a natural gift for doing something. And many definitions of intelligence have been defined in a racist way. For example, the concept of intelligence quotient, the IQ test, was designed in a racist way. Go look it up. I'm not going to get into it, but there is a study about it. Go look it up. Go look up. There are studies and videos about the history of the IQ test. Go look it up and learn about it if you don't know about it. And even if you have heard about it, I suggest you educate yourself on it so that you're more well informed to fight it. But yes, Intelligence has always historically been seen as something that is born within you, something that you have, not something that you work to achieve or something that you learn. And that is why I've eliminated from my vocabulary. I do not wish to compliment people on things that they do not control, things that they are quote unquote born with. For me, a compliment is something that you give to someone something that they've learned, something that they've grown up into, something that they have achieved or kind of worked hard for maybe, but that's a little bit of a slippery slope as well. That's something you've got to be careful on. But you wouldn't go up to someone, like, it's just weird to go up to someone and go, like, the people think that calling someone skinny is a compliment, like, oh man, you're so thin. Like, huh? Hello? Most of the time you can't really control that. So it's not really a compliment, is it? It's just an observation. But we treat it as a compliment. And so when we attach compliments to things that are quote unquote natural, that we didn't really like earn or achieve, or like something that we're not really proud of, we start attaching compliments to our sense of self-worth and being. And therefore, if you call someone smart, you'd better be prepared to keep calling them smart. Otherwise, they are going to grow up believing that they're not smart and therefore not enough, because you've attached the concept of intelligence to their being. And it's not a good cognitive dissonance to have. So yeah, I don't use intelligence when I compliment people. Excuse me. And because of that pressure, just like I've talked about intelligence there, to bring it back to Anakin. Anakin has basically been told that he's going to save the world. Why would you tell him that? He was 9 years old when you told him that. What is wrong with you? Why would you ever tell anyone that? It's such an incredible burden to put on someone. Yeah. So yeah, and instead of being like, yo, I want that too, he lashed out hardcore. Yeah. Oh, well, for what you were talking about earlier, yeah, absolutely. I think, yeah, he can't really like settle on a thought. I've been like this, still kind of am. It's been a hard journey in changing that part of me to be better. What, like believing that you're smart, or emotional regulation, or what is the what is the thing that you've been wrestling with, Elfergs? Imagine being told that you're the person who's going to save reality every day since you were 9 years old. You'd never deal with it. You lived up to that expectation. Yeah. Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, yeah. I mean, we agree. 100% agreed. I find people use intelligence in an ableist way to me. Oh yeah. I haven't even started on that one. Absolutely. Completely in an ableist way. As soon as they found out I'm autistic, they keep going on that I'm so intelligent. Ah, yes. Because autistic people's like have superpowers, The problem with that, like the unfortunate part about that, is that when people say that like autistic people are super intelligent, I think a lot of it comes from a wish to make them feel seen and valid. And that makes it kind of sad, because it ends up doing the opposite. It ends up like, othering them again, instead of just being like, that person's autistic. Cool. And what do they need? And that's it. That's what that's the extent of what it should be. It's not a reflection of like how smart you are, because again, that puts an expectation on someone to like, keep being smart. Otherwise they're not going to be enough. And then you define your autism as being your intelligence, and maybe that can change, Maybe you were called intelligent because when you were, younger, your sort of your special interest was like, I don't know, butterflies. And then that changes maybe over the course of your life. Then you have another special interest, and now maybe you don't feel so smart anymore. And then you start feeling a bit like less of a person. Your autism starts feeling less valid to you. And it creates this complex within you, for sure. That coworker called me smart, and I had to correct him that I'm knowledgeable. Yes, preach. Educated. Knowledgeable. I learn a lot. I read a lot. I listen. I'm a good listener. Those are qualities that we learn. I'm smart. is a nothing word. It means nothing because it could mean everything. You know what I mean? Before this, I was just clued in on specific things and to an extent know what I'm talking about with specific things. And that's it. Like, cool. Just put it like that. That doesn't make me think that you're smart for any reason, you know? I mean, because everyone is smart. That's what I'm talking about. Let's just like delete the word smart, you know? Better keep calling them smart. 100% that part, says the burnt out, formerly gifted child. Yeah, I mean, yeah, exactly. We have created this idea that smart is something that is like inherent in you. And therefore, if you don't maintain that, they're going to feel like they've lost that part of them. And so they're going to spend their whole lives trying to build it back and trying to earn that title again. When all you should be focusing on is whether you're a good person, whether you learn, whether you're good at learning, whether you develop empathy, all these other good things that are impactful. Life is more than being called smart. The emotional regulation, I've had many emotional outbursts. Bro, so have I. Dude, I had an emotional outburst last night, right? And I'm the same. And I will say this, emotional outbursts are not inherently bad, but not if they're targeted at other people who don't necessarily deserve them. You can have an emotional outburst. You can be angry and like shout and scream, just not at people. Because your body and your mind needs to get it out there, right? And if that's what you need to get it out there, then you do that. Now, I'm not really a shouter and a screamer. I like if I need an outburst for like 2 seconds, I'll like hit my desk or something, and then it's done, and then I can maybe talk about it like in a few hours. But the emotional outburst itself is not inherently bad unless you target someone else with it. Emotional regulation is a long road, and it doesn't mean like floating through your life. It doesn't mean becoming this higher than everyone like spiritual being, you know. Emotional regulation is just being real with yourself about your emotions and making sure that no one gets caught in the crossfire of your outbursts. And that's it, really. There's some nuanced stuff like communication. That's all tied to that. But that's the base for me. Like, yeah, my brain works differently, and I also know how X, Y, and Z works, and I'm able to explain how Z impacts Y and vice versa. The fact I'm autistic has nothing to do with my apparent intelligence, but no, I'm worth more because I'm perceived as intelligent. Absolutely. Absolutely. And it creates so many problems in our minds. I still need to fix a wall from my last outburst, been meaning to do that for months. Maybe don't punch holes in walls. Maybe that's like a good benchmark to set, right? So sometimes like if you need a pillow to hit for a while, like something soft that's not going to break when you hit it, because also, you know, your hand is important, you know? Don't break your fingers. But emotional outbursts take different forms, and they're okay. So long as they don't affect other people, and so long as they don't hurt yourself in the process. Like punching a wall. All right. So here we go. Let's continue. He just kept staring down over the rail into the invisible distance below. She moved close to him, moved against him, her arm sliding around his shoulders. Wow. Her cheek leaning lightly on his arm. Why does it have to be like this? Why does there have to even be such a thing as war? Can't we just go back? Even just to pretend. Let's pretend we're back at the lake on Naboo. Just the two of us. There was no war, no politics, no plotting. Just us. You and me and love. That's all we need. You and me and love. Right now, Anakin couldn't remember what that had been like. I have to go, he said. The Chancellor is waiting. And now we have, I think, one of my favorite scenes in all of Star Wars. This is going to be the opera scene. First, yeah, Padme believes in this a lot more than Anakin. First of all, there was politics back there. She just didn't see them because she wanted to bang. But Anakin was like super pro-authoritarian back on Naboo as well. And I think also this is interestingly portrayed very well in the movie. You can see that on Hayden Christensen's face. You can see it on Anakin's face in this moment when she's like, hold me like you did on the lake on Naboo, that scene where she hugs him and she just wants to feel that. And he's just a million miles away. It's very sad. Anyway, here we go. I need some more water. Oh. I feel like there's an angle that's wrong with my neck. You know, I think Oh, that was a good one. Oh, okay. Hold on a second. Oh. I just want to sort of readjust myself. It's getting hotter, so my just doing a bit of a neck stretch. It's getting hotter, so my eyebrows. Yo, that was good. Let's do it to the other side. Yeah. Very nice. Oh, goodness. Okay, we're good. Let's do this again. Right. Here we go. Two masked, robed, silent red guards flanked the door to the Chancellor's private box at the Galaxy's Opera. Anakin didn't need to speak. As he approached, one of them said, "You are expected," and opened the door. The small round box had only a handful of seats, overlooking the spread of overdressed beings who filled every seat in the orchestra. On this opening night, it seemed everyone had forgotten there was a war on. Anakin barely gave a glance toward the immense sphere of shimmering water that rippled gently in the stage's artificial zero-G. He had no interest in ballet, Mon Calamari or otherwise. Oh, it's a Mon Calamari ballet? That looks so cool. That must be so cool. In the dim semi-gloom, Palpatine sat with the Speaker of the Senate, Maz Ameda, and his administrative aide, Sly Moore, both of whom know about Palpatine, by the way. They both know that he is the Sith Lord. Anakin stopped at the back of the box. If I were the spy the Council wants me to be, I suppose I should be creeping up behind them so I can listen in. A spasm of distaste passed over his face. He took care to win it off before he spoke. "Chancellor, sorry I'm late." Palpatine turned toward him, and his face lit up. "Yes, Anakin. Don't worry. Come in, my boy, come in. Thank you for your report on the council meeting this afternoon. It made most interesting reading. Now I have good news for you. Clone intelligence has located General Grievous." "That's tremendous." Anakin shook his head, wondering if Obi-Wan would be embarrassed to have been scooped by the clones. He won't escape us again. I'm going to... More, take a note. I will direct the council to give you this assignment, Anakin. Your gifts are wasted on Coruscant. You should be out in the field. You can attend council meetings by holoconference. Anakin frowned. "Thank you, sir, but the council coordinates Jedi assignments." Of course. Mustn't step on any Jedi toes, must we? They are so jealous of their political prerogatives. Still, I shall wonder at their collective wisdom if they choose someone else. He's such a shit. You know what I mean? He's such a shit. God. Anyway. As I said in my report, they've already assigned Obi-Wan to find Grievous because they want to keep me here, where I'm supposed to spy on you.
To find him, yes, but you are the best man to apprehend him.
Though, of course, the Jedi Council cannot always be trusted to do the right thing. They try. I believe they try, sir. Do you still? Sit down. Palpatine looked at the other two beings in the box.
Leave us.
They rose and withdrew. Anakin took Masameda's seat. That's pretty poetic, actually. The right hand of Palpatine. Palpatine gazed distractedly down at the graceful undulations of the Mon Calamari principal soloist for a long moment, frowning as though there was so much he wanted to say he was unsure where to begin. Finally, he sighed heavily and leaned close to Anakin. Here you go.
Anakin, I think you know by now that I cannot rely upon the Jedi Council. That is why I put you on it. If they have not yet tried to use you in their plot, they soon will.
Anakin kept his face carefully blank. I'm not sure I understand.
You must sense what I have come to suspect, Palpatine said grimly. The Jedi Council is after more than independence from Senate oversight. I believe they intend to control the Republic itself.
Chancellor,
I believe they are planning treason. They hope to overthrow my government and replace me with someone weak enough that Jedi mind tricks can control his every word.
Hide the lies amongst smidgens of truth, and you will make someone believe some really shocking things. This is what he's doing here. I can't believe the council...
Anakin, search your feelings.
You do know, don't you? Anakin looked away. I know they don't trust you.
Or the Senate, or the Republic, or democracy for that matter. The Jedi Council is not elected, selects its own members according to its own rules. A less generous man than I might say whim, and gives them authority backed by power. They rule the Jedi, as they hope to rule the Republic, by fist.
I admit, Anakin looked down at his hands. My faith in them has been shaken. How? Have they approached you already? Have they ordered you to do something dishonest? Palpatine's frown cleared into a gently wise smile that was oddly reminiscent of Yoda's. They want you to spy on me, don't they? It's all right, Anakin. I have nothing to hide. I don't know what to say.
Do you remember, Palpatine said, drawing away from Anakin so that he could lean back comfortably in his seat, how, as a young boy, when you first came to this planet, I tried to teach you the ins and outs of politics?
Anakin smiled faintly. I remember that I didn't much care for the lessons.
For any lessons, as I recall. But it's a pity. You should have paid more attention. To understand politics is to understand the fundamental nature of thinking beings. Right now, you should remember one of my first teachings. All those who gain power are afraid to lose it, even the Jedi.
The Jedi use their power for good, Anakin said, a little too firmly.
Good is a point of view, Anakin. The Jedi concept of good is not the only valid one. Take your Dark Lords of the Sith, for example. From my reading, I have gathered the Sith believed in justice and security every bit as much as the Jedi.
Jedi believe in justice and peace. In these troubled times, is there a difference? Palpatine asked mildly.
The Jedi have not done a stellar job of bringing peace to the galaxy, you must agree. Who's to say the Sith might not have done better? This is another of those arguments you probably shouldn't bring up in front of the Council, if you know what I mean, Anakin replied with a disbelieving smile. Oh yes, because the Sith would be a threat to the Jedi Order's power. Lesson 1. Anakin shook his head. Because the Sith are evil. From a Jedi's point of view, Palpatine allowed. Evil is a label we all put on those who threaten us, isn't it? Yet the Sith and the Jedi are similar in almost every way, including their quest for greater power. The Jedi's quest is for greater understanding, Anakin countered, for greater knowledge of the Force, which brings with it greater power, does it not? Well, yes. Anakin had to laugh. I should know better than to argue with a politician. We're not arguing, Anakin. We're just talking. Palpatine shifted his weight, settling in comfortably. Excuse me. Perhaps the real difference between the Jedi and the Sith lies only in their orientation. A Jedi gains power through understanding, and a Sith gains understanding through power. This is the true reason the Sith have always been more powerful than the Jedi. The Jedi fear the dark side so much they cut themselves off from the most important aspect of life. Passion. Of any kind. They don't even allow themselves to love. Except for me, Anakin thought. But then I've never been exactly the perfect Jedi. The Sith do not fear the dark side. The Sith have no fear. They embrace the whole spectrum of experience, from the heights of transcendent joy to the depths of hatred and despair. Beings have these emotions for a reason, Anakin. That is why the Sith are more powerful. They are not afraid to feel. The Sith rely on passion for strength, Anakin said. But when that passion runs dry, what's left? Perhaps nothing. Perhaps a great deal. Perhaps it never runs dry at all. Who can say? They think inward, only about themselves. And the Jedi don't. The Jedi are selfless. We erase the self to join with the flow of the Force. We care only about others. Palpatine again gave him that smile of gentle wisdom. Or so you've been trained to believe. I hear the voice of Obi-Wan Kenobi in your answers, Anakin. What do you really think? Anakin suddenly found the ballet a great deal more interesting than Palpatine's face. I don't know anymore. It is said that if one could ever entirely comprehend a single grain of sand, really, truly understand everything about it, one would at the same time entirely comprehend the universe. Who's to say that a Sith, by looking inward, sees less than a Jedi does by looking out? The Jedi are good. That's the difference. I don't care who sees what. What the Jedi are, Palpatine said gently, is a group of very powerful beings you consider to be your comrades. You are loyal to your friends. I have known that for as long as I've known you, and I admire you for it. But are your friends loyal to you? Anakin shot him a sudden frown. What do you mean? Would a true friend ask you to do something that's wrong? I'm not sure it's wrong, Anakin said. Obi-Wan might have been telling the truth. It was possible. They might only want to catch Sidious. They might really be trying to protect Palpatine. They might. Maybe. If they asked you to break the Jedi Code, to violate the Constitution, to betray a friendship, to betray your own values. Chancellor, think, Anakin. I've always tried to teach you to think. Yes, Jedi do not think, they know, but those stale answers aren't good enough now in these changing times. Consider their motives. Keep your mind clear of assumptions. The fear of losing power is a weakness of both the Jedi and the Sith. Anakin sank lower in his seat. Too much had happened in too short a time. Everything jumbled together in his head, and none of it seemed to make complete sense, except for what Palpatine said. That made too much sense. This puts me in the mind of an old legend, Palpatine murmured idly. Anakin, are you familiar with the tragedy of Darth Plagueis the Wise? Yeah, he said the thing. All right. So we're gonna stop there, and we're gonna talk about Plagueis for a second. All right, here we go. I forgot how thin that wall was. It was just the nearest thing to hit when my mum was pecking at me, refusing to learn the meaning of "go away." If I felt that feels like a conversation for another time. We can get into it though. Opera House, let's go. Yeah. Hiding the lies and the truth, and then slowly remove the truth. Mm-hmm. All right. Good night, Alex. I hope you're sleeping. It's scary hearing Palpatine use these arguments because these are many of the same things fans say to defend Anakin or attack the Jedi for failing Anakin. That's a very good take. I love this. And I think that this shows a lot about the manipulation of the so-called dark side. That it sprinkles truth. Well, first of all, we talked about sprinkling truth in with the lies so that the lies are the things that you hear more than the truth. And therefore, the truth doesn't really matter in the way that you're putting it in, right? I mean, Palpatine is saying things like, yeah, the Jedi do this, but, so do the Sith, and therefore that's why the Sith are good. Like, that's his basic thing. But, I mean, sorry, there's more nuance, but I'm trying to keep it as reductionist as possible. He's putting in truth about the Jedi to then bump up the Sith, and that part is the lie. And I think for people who defend Anakin, just like you've said, they use the same reasons that Palpatine is using right now to justify Anakin's actions, no matter what they were. Imagine telling someone people who gain power fear losing it, then 5 minutes later tell them the Sith have no fear. Exactly. But then what's really interesting is that he then counters himself. And he says, the fear of losing power is a weakness of both the Jedi and the Sith. So Palpatine is putting himself in the position of someone who always makes sense to Anakin. And therefore, he can say anything, including contradict himself in the space of 5 minutes, and Anakin will still hang on to every word. And I'll tell you why he can do this. It is because he hits Anakin where it hurts. He knows how to speak to Anakin to connect to his emotions. He plays on what Anakin is already feeling. He takes advantage of his already existing insecurities and uses those to ensure manipulations. That is how he does it. And very much like how the fans justify Anakin, that is because Anakin brings out a lot of the same emotions that the fans who justify him have in themselves. That is why there is that connection. Palpatine exploits the emotional vulnerability of Anakin here by telling him exactly what he wants to know and then twisting it so that he can get him to join the Sith. Just like how Anakin as a character highlights the emotional vulnerabilities and weaknesses of the fans who look up to him. And then the character plays upon those vulnerabilities in an empathetic and relatable way. people who defend Anakin relate to him, but they, unfortunately, do not place their reasons why they relate to him at the feet of the correct systems. They place them at the feet of anyone except themselves. They place them at the feet of the Jedi. They place them at the feet of, well, not even Palpatine, funnily enough, but I'm sure many do. They place them at the feet of even Padme sometimes. Anything but himself. Because if the fans are going to, if the defenders of Anakin are going to, if the defenders of Anakin are going to make the correct leap that Anakin is responsible for most of his doings, then they have to accept that within themselves, that their vulnerabilities are mostly to do with themselves. And that requires an uncomfortable mental step. And that is why they would rather just justify him. It's, this is a masterful manipulation tactic. I'm going to say, I think before we learn about Darth Plagueis, I think my favorite, like, let's quickly check this. So he says, okay. I think Palpatine's amazing, like, nuance of manipulation is in the little things. So, for example, he every sentence he says is designed to draw out another emotional vulnerability within Anakin. So when he says things like this, "I'll direct the council to give you this assignment." I mean, very obvious, playing on that already, that insecurity. And then he says, "Mustn't step on any Jedi toes." Another example. They're so jealous. He undermines the Jedi again and again and again and again. And even when he gives them a so-called compliment, it's backstabbed. It's a hidden backstabbing. Then he says, though of course the Jedi Council cannot always be trusted to do the right thing. And then he starts. Then Anakin says, "I believe they try." And he says, "Do you still? Even after everything, you still believe they try?" This, I think, is one of my favorite things about Palpatine's manipulations, is that he does it in the subtle ways and in the overt ways. He leaves no room for escape from them if you interact with him. Blah, blah, blah. Then he just talks about something that is completely fake, but it is based in suspicion because the Jedi are talking about this. We've already heard them speak on this. We've heard them speak on how they don't trust the Chancellor, and they have entertained options of taking him in if he doesn't give up his power once the war is over. And so Palpatine uses that as a way to say that they're plotting to betray me. And I haven't done anything wrong. And of course, Anakin, who's already primed to not trust the Jedi Council, will go along with this, of course. Okay. Okay, yeah, again. I believe they are planning treason. They are. But they're not doing it to overthrow the government and replace me with someone weak enough that Jedi mind tricks can control his every word. No. This is a perfect definition of sprinkle the truth amongst the lies and make the lies more believable. Yeah. It's great. It's great. I'm not going to go through all of this. It's just too much. But yeah. Okay. Here we go. We're going to learn about Darth Plagueis the Wise. Anakin. Are you familiar with the tragedy of Darth Plagueis the Wise? Anakin shook his head. Ah, I thought not. It's not a story the Jedi would tell you. It's a Sith legend of a Dark Lord that turned his sight inward so deeply that he had come to comprehend and master life itself. And, because the two are one, when seen clearly enough, death itself. Anakin sat up. Was he actually hearing this? He could keep someone safe from death. According to the legend, Palpatine said, he could directly influence the midichlorians to create life. Such knowledge to maintain life in someone already living would seem a small matter, don't you agree? A universe of possibility blossomed inside Anakin's head. He murmured, stronger than death. The dark side seems to be, from my reading, the pathway to many abilities, some considered to be unnatural. Anakin couldn't seem to get his breath. What happened to him? Oh, well, it is a tragedy after all, you know. Once he has gained this ultimate power, he has nothing to fear, save losing it. That's why the Jedi Council brought him to mind, you know. But what happened? Well, to safeguard his power's existence, he teaches the path toward it to his apprentice. And his apprentice kills him in his sleep, Palpatine said with a careless shrug. Plagueis never sees it coming. That's the tragic irony, you see. He can save anyone in the galaxy from death, but not himself. What about the apprentice? What happens to him? Oh, him. He goes on to become the greatest Dark Lord the Sith have ever known. So, it's only a tragedy for Plagueis. For the apprentice, the legend has a happy ending. Well, yes, quite right. I never really thought of it that way. Rather like what we were talking about earlier, isn't it? What if... Anakin said slowly, almost not daring to speak the words. What if it's not just a legend? I'm sorry? What if Darth Plagueis really lived? What if someone really had this power? I am rather certain that Plagueis did indeed exist. And if someone actually had this power, well, he would indeed be one of the most powerful men in the galaxy. Not to mention virtually immortal. How would I find him? I'm sure I couldn't say. You could ask your friends in the Jedi Council, I suppose. But of course, if they ever found him, they'd kill him on the spot. Not as punishment for any crime, you understand. Innocence is irrelevant to the Jedi. They would kill him simply for being Sith, and his knowledge would die with him. I have to... Anakin found himself half out of his seat, fists clenched and trembling. He forced himself to relax and sit back down, and he took a deep breath. You seem to know so much about this. I need you to tell me. Would it be possible at all, to learn this power? Palpatine shrugged, regarding him with that smile of gentle wisdom. Well, clearly, he said, not from a Jedi. It's masterful. I love it. I love it, love it, love it, love it. And that's where we're gonna take it. We're gonna take it away today. That was fantastically done. Fantastically done. Is this how Rey was born? Is that a serious question? Because if it is, Rey is Rey was born out of... She's not a clone herself. She's the daughter of a clone. So when Palpatine was learning how to create immortal life, he invested in cloning technology. This is what the Mandalorian series has also been leading up to. Like why they kidnapped Grogu, why the Empire Remnant wanted Grogu. They're trying to bring Palpatine back. Palpatine is inhabiting a body that is too weak for him to actually do anything with, except like use spiritual force. He can't really be active with it, right? So it's a very serious question. Okay, great. So, because I actually know this, so this is actually very interesting. So when Palpatine, even before he died, he's always been obsessed with immortality, right? Because he killed Plagueis in his sleep, but he didn't learn what Plagueis was able to do with the Force to create this life, right? He could create this unlife, right? Hang on. Let's move over to you. He could create this corruption of life with midichlorians, and he could manipulate them with the Force, but it wasn't perfect. And so when Palpatine killed him, he'd never learned that knowledge, either because they hadn't been able to do it together, or because Plagueis had never taught that to him. And so Palpatine has spent his entire life trying to obviously rule the galaxy, but become immortal himself so that he can rule it forever and become the most powerful Sith ever, right? His passion, his ambition is unlimited, right? That's the whole point. He's the personification of evil. We never really go into the kind of... There are some young Palpatine novels and stuff. I'm not sure if they're canon or legends, but Palpatine himself has never been a character that we relate to. He's never been an emotional character. Anakin is the one we relate to. Anakin is the one who's tragic. Palpatine is the personification of evil. He's not redeemable. His purpose is to he's there to rule and be a big enemy, completely unfathomable for us to understand, for us to destroy. So what he does is, in his quest for power, he looks, even before his death in Episode 6, he looks for ways to bring himself back. At the moment of his death in Episode 6, when Vader throws him down the reactor shaft, he uses a power of the Force called transfer life, where his soul escapes his body. And so his body is destroyed, but his soul roams the galaxy and looks for a body to inhabit. And so begins his quest to inhabit a body that is powerful enough to hold someone of his Force power. That's essentially what he's trying to do. And so then, the body that had been prepared for him, because his death was not planned for, the destruction of his body was not planned for, the body that had been prepared for him already was not ready for that. And so the procedure wasn't complete. So when he tried to do Plagueis' thing and engage his immortality quest, whatever, because Darth Vader brought his death a little bit earlier than he anticipated, he went into a body that was not completely ready for him. And that's why he looks so messed up in Episode 9 when we see him. And so in order to try and counter that, he planned to use his transfer life again, but this time into a clone. So he started tasking his followers with finding the most powerful Force-sensitive people that he could possibly get to get blood samples from them so that he could create clones who were as powerful in the Force, as sensitive to the Force as those people. That is why he used Grogu. That's why that's why the Imperial Remnant was trying to use Grogu's blood. Excuse me. To try and clone a Force sensitive as powerful as them. Because Grogu belongs to a species that, has one of the most powerful concentrations of midichlorians ever. So he wanted to take Grogu's blood and create a person who looks like, or just any person, probably someone who just would take the same appearance as Palpatine, who would have the same genetic data, but would have the midichlorian count of Grogu. Because remember, Palpatine doesn't have a body anymore. It was destroyed in the Death Star. And then they started cloning. But the cloning process was imperfect. And they created a bunch of messed up clones called strand casts. And these strand casts were created and then cast out immediately. They were destroyed, or they were consumed, or they were used again, or whatever. They were failures. One of those failures, one of those strand casts, was Snoke. And Snoke was sent out I believe maybe as a distraction, to try and keep Palpatine's truth hidden. But Snoke was a failed clone. I don't really know what happened to his story. That's a part of the lore I'm foggy on. The second, like, really important strand cast that was created out of Palpatine's cloning efforts was Rey's father. Palpatine's son, essentially. He created a strand cast that would serve as a son who would grow into the power, as opposed to just trying to create a Snoke and have it, like, be there. So he tried it a different way. But when this, like, strand cast was determined to not have the potential to be as force sensitive as Palpatine, he resented all of this and escaped. He left. And when he left, he found love with Rey's mom. And together they had Rey. And their life was fine until Palpatine discovered through the Force that Rey had been born, and that she had the ability to be a good enough host for him. And so he sent this assassin that we see in episode 9, the one that they're all looking for. What is his name? Ochi. He sent the assassin to go kill Rey's parents and take Rey. But the parents had already left Rey on Jakku, so Ochi couldn't find her. And so he killed the parents as a result, and Palpatine then began to wait. And when Rey would, like, grow up and eventually leave Jakku, Palpatine was waiting to, like, put his hooks into her. And he used that through Snoke, through Kylo Ren, through whatever. And so Rey is the granddaughter of Palpatine, but not a clone. She's the daughter of a clone of Palpatine. A clone that was created to grow into his power, but could never achieve that. And so left as a result. And that's Rey. Again, Sith have no fear. Then why does Plagueis, a Sith, fear something? Exactly. This whole Sith have no fear is a target against Anakin. It's a weapon against Anakin to give him, like, to give him validation, because Anakin never admits that he's afraid. Never. He is not afraid. His fear is something that he keeps deep down. He will never admit that he's afraid. And so when Palpatine tells him the Sith have no fear, Anakin goes, this thing that I'm so scared of, this fear that I'm actually I fear, I'll dominate it if I'm a Sith. And he kind of sows that seed within him. So I can't tell if you're joking. Yeah, same. It was framed like a joke. That's why. Anyway, I'm gonna nitpick because Pedantics, her father was a Strandcast, not technically a clone. Yes, I know. Yeah. I was getting there. Yeah. No, but a Strandcast, yeah. Google said Rey was born on Hypercon in 15 ABY during the rise of the New Republic. Her father, Dathan, was a bioengineered Strandcast clone from the genetic template of Darth Sidious. Yes, absolutely. Which I think I might have just explained. So his soul was just bopping around like a J.K. Rowling villain. Essentially it happened, I don't think it roamed. I think it happened instantaneously. Basically, before Palpatine's death, he was already planning to accept a new body, because his old body was getting weak. He was like 80 years old or whatever. The dark side destroys your physical form. So the more powerful you get in the dark side, your physical form, like, can't take it anymore. Eventually it will destroy you. So he wanted to get a new body. This happens in Legends as well, by the way. He created like 16 different clones. So what he did was, even before his death, he anticipated needing a clone anyway. But by the time his death came, it was unexpected, because Vader was the one who killed him. So he had to go into whatever they had available. And that was this incomplete, like, messed up, like, vegetable floating in a tank, And that's all they could do. That was like the best they could do. He wanted to be a Grogu clone. Presumably not one that looked like Grogu, but that would have been kind of funny. Can you imagine if people whisper about Darth Sidious returning, and this tiny green dude walks in, and everyone's like, oh my god, we're saved. It's someone from Yoda's species. And he just raises his hand, and it's like Dark Yoda? That'd be incredible. This is so much more than I've ever known. All new info. I'm glad to inform you. I sent the Google said comment because it was the info I could find while I waited for you to reply, not because I was trying to correct you. Oh, yeah, no, for sure. Don't worry, I know that stream chat is different from like what I'm saying. Don't worry. Bro, Taters, have you seen the Clone Wars? Have you seen the Clone Wars? Have you watched season 6 of the Clone Wars? I'm not saying Dark Yoda exists, but the last 4 episodes, 3 or 4, I think 4. The last 4 episodes of season 6 of the Clone Wars is an entire arc dedicated to Yoda. It is one of my favorite arcs in the whole show because Yoda is one of my favorite characters, and it will change how you see him as a character. It is incredible. Absolutely incredible. I love the fantasy trope of the old mentor character still having things to learn, and this is what that arc is. It is so good. I want to talk about it, but I'm not gonna because you haven't seen it. So watch it ASAP, and then I'll talk about it on stream because it is something that I could go into detail about. If anyone talks about like what's your TED talk that you could do like off the cuff, pretty much anything Star Wars, but talking about Yoda and like what he's done for the Jedi Order and what he's done for the galaxy is something that I could talk about all day. No, I'm not going to spoil it. Don't worry. No, you got to watch it. You're going to watch it and then I'll talk about it. I know you don't mind spoilers. I do. Watch it and then we'll talk about it. So, oh yeah, Darth Nihilus, I think it was. Basically just become a roaming soul that sucked life from whole planets. Darth Nihilus had a body though. So he was technically a roaming soul or whatever, but he had a cloak and a mask and whatever. He was still a man. What Darth Nihilus did was he learned a technique. He learned the technique of eating Force sensitives so that he could grow more powerful, and doing that destroyed him as a person, and he became only a vessel through which to feed on Force sensitives. That's pretty much it. Unlimited high power, but in the high-pitched Anzelian speech. Unlimited power! I want to watch Clone Wars, but I haven't yet. Yeah. So, I can't believe you haven't seen any of them, though. Hyewan and I have been watching it together, and we've just finished Season 7, the end of Season 7. And we're going to go on to the Bad Batch now, because that's why we were kind of pushing through all the episodes of Clone Wars, because we wanted to watch the Bad Batch. And I said, you've got to watch Clone Wars first, because there's stuff that happens in there that I don't want to be a spoiler for you in here, because we had watched the first 3 seasons of Clone Wars by the time that Bad Batch Season 2 came out, and we were like, okay, we got to make a deal. We got to finish Clone Wars before, because she's now like gotten to know and love some of the clones in the Clone Wars that are not around for Bad Batch. Some of them are around, but you don't think they're going to be. And it creates, I wanted her to go in with like the knowledge before. Yeah. It's such a great arc. Definitely should be watched first. I would say, yeah, the Yoda arc is one of the most important. OOC, it's one of the most important pieces of storytelling for the universe of Star Wars. And in character, it's one of the most important moments in all of Star Wars. With no exaggeration. What Yoda does in that arc is one of the most important things to ever happen to anyone in the whole galaxy. I'm in the middle of a show. Oh, what show? Because then you should finish that and watch Clone Wars. Speaking of spoilers, I had the season finale spoiled for me of Bad Batch. Has it been out yet? I think I might have been spoiled for one thing that happens, which kind of, I'm trying not to like focus on it too much so that I don't remember it in the moment. But I think I like accidentally looked at a spoiler and then like I moved away as soon as I could, but I was like, oh, damn it. I hate it when that happens. Hate it. I mean, at this point, you have yourself to blame because the internet's full of spoilers. Just by interacting with the internet, there's going to be someone talking about it. And I don't want to stop anyone talking about it, you know? I got dropouts. I've been watching D20 seasons. Oh, cool. Awesome. I've wanted to watch Game Changer, but I don't have dropout. Yeah, I thought we just got the finale 2 episode week, but apparently I didn't watch them last week. Oh, okay. Yeah, we're going to move on to it now. We're going to start with season 1 of the Bad Batch, and we're going to move on to season 2. It's going to be great. It's going to be great moving from season 1 directly to season 2 as well. So yeah,
That's awesome. All right, there is something. Before I move on to the Mandalorian, because I do want to watch that, we are going to talk about that now. There was something in this scene. Darth Plagueis the Wise. The tale of Darth Plagueis the Wise. What I think my favorite part about this is that Palpatine is talking about himself. And in this, I think part of the reason it's my favorite scene is that it highlights how good Palpatine is at manipulation, but also, like, just how much of a master he is of his own, like, arrogance and ability. Because he can, and you see his emotional range in the scene in the movie, he can sit next to Anakin, a powerful Jedi Master, and tell him the story of him. He can tell him his own origin story with him and his master to Anakin and treat it as something that happened a long time ago, and at the same time, in the same breath, congratulate himself and gloat for killing him, for killing Plagueis, and for like learning from him and stuff like that. And then we see something more in this novelization that we don't see in the movie, and that is Anakin talking about the apprentice. And Palpatine says, well, the apprentice went on to become the greatest Dark Lord the Sith has ever known. He pats himself on the back in front of Anakin. It's such a great moment for him, honestly. I want to get Dropout for Game Changers, and I wish I could actually be on I don't know if I'm confident enough to be on Oh, literally only Star Wars. Maybe Marvel, but I'd be comfortable with Star Wars lore. Oh, maybe D&D as well. Still, I feel like it might be fun. All right. With that said, everyone, if you have any Star Wars questions, please keep asking them because I love talking about them. And we're going to keep doing Star Wars. I will be right back. Going to get myself some more water. And then we're going to talk about the Mandalorian episode. So if you haven't seen it yet, now is your time to say goodbye. If you are leaving, thank you for being here. And we're going to take a small break. I will see you all, if you would like to hear about the Mandalorian episode, in maybe 5 minutes. So I'm not gonna lie, this actually does sound like Star Wars. But apparently it's Kingdom Hearts. Very cool, very cool. Right, from now on we're moving into spoilers. We are moving into spoiler territory for The Mandalorian. So please do keep that in mind. This is not what I don't want you to have this moment where you're coming in and then you get spoiled with The Mandalorian. I'm going to move it into the screen share as well so that I can... There we go. Okay, perfect. Right. So, Mandalorian. Now... Oh, wait, hold on. I've received a Discord message. Okay. Right, we're talking about The Mandalorian. The first thing I'm going to do is go look at my... We're going to go to my Discord. And we're going to talk about Mandalorian Season 3. The newest episode here. Hold on a sec. We're going to talk about the Discord episode, what's been going on in my Discord first, now that I can actually participate in the discussion. And then we're going to go online and talk about it. First, my thoughts. I love this episode. Honestly, I love every episode. Yeah, same. Once again, in terms of the narrative in terms of the greater narrative arc, we are rising action again. So we've had the first, we've had the first bit of exposition about the Mandos, and I think the biggest climax was going to Mandalore, seeing the Mythosaur, and then coming back. And the falling action was then Bo-Katan being accepted as part of the Mandalorian covert, and then kind of she works with them and is accepted by them and walks the way, and the armorer learns something. I'll talk about her later. Then, once again, now that we've come to like the end of something and they're like a clan now, we need a new plot. Something that was called in from before, this pirate king, I can't remember his name, but he pilots one of the coolest ships I've ever seen in Star Wars. I want one. It gave me Old Republic vibes. It was so cool. But yeah,
Now in this narrative structure, there's a new plot, a new motivation. Now that we're finished with the Mandalorian, like, culture exposition, now we need to build up more about the New Republic and about the Imperial Remnant. And I think we need to build up the big enemies of this, the big, like, opponents of this season, which I believe is not once again going to be the Imperial Remnant only, but also, as we've seen at the end of the episode, enemy Mandalorians. And I'm thinking that they're going to be Gar Saxon-esque Mandalorians, like super commandos who worked for the Empire and who are still loyal to them. And I think that what we are going to see is, as the Mandalorians try to take back Mandalore, they're going to meet these loyalists, and we're going to see Mandalorians take on other Mandalorians for sure. I think that's what this is building up to. The pirate the Pirate King was a narrative device to get the Mandalorians back out into the open and to reveal the preparations mentally that the Armorer was making. I think, I was very pleasantly surprised to see the Armorer look up to Bo-Katan rather than see her as a rival. Too often, unfortunately, have we seen in stories the only two main female characters fighting each other for the only spot of power that a female character has access to in a particular power structure. It's called Queen Bee Syndrome, and it is a real thing that happens in the real world, like in business circles and like corporate ladders and stuff. Women have so few opportunities to succeed and make it in the industry anyway, and so when a woman does get to the top, she sometimes can sabotage other women's sort of journeys on their way to the top as well. I mean, you know, the real solution is just get rid of the corporate ladder anyway and just down with capitalism. But the point is that this Queen Bee Syndrome does exist, and it unfortunately pits like successful women against each other because only one can occupy the top spot. There's this belief due to the patriarchy that this is a thing. And what I really like is that I feel like we've seen enough stories of that, you know? And so I was really looking forward to I think I was kind of worried that after the Armorer's like initial response to Bo-Katan, talking about how she'd seen the mythosaur, the Armorer's initial response was like, you know, like, you've seen it, but I don't really care, and this is the way, and whatever. I don't know if she believed her or not, but I kind of saw that we were setting up a conflict. And I think that the writers and makers of the show were also making us think that they were setting up a conflict. And then we had this at the end of this episode. Bo-Katan sees the Armorer, and I think, man, are we going to fight? Because I don't know, I'd be a little bit disappointed if they did another Queen Bee thing, you know? Because I want to see these two characters work together rather than try and undermine each other. Because I think, you know, it's high time we kind of try to teach people that there's a better way to go than a Queen Bee, you know? And I loved that subversion of expectation where she turned around and said, I lead these people, these children of the Watch, but you have come to me originally having not walked our way, and you have seen the mythosaur. The new era of Mandalore will be heralded by you. And I think the Armorer once again solidifies herself as one of my favorite Star Wars characters, purely based on she has this incredible fundamentalist belief in how to be a Mandalorian. And Bo-Katan comes to her and undoes her entire belief system in like one interaction. And then the Armorer goes to her and says, you know what? There's more than one way to walk this path. You've seen both. You do both. Mandalorians will be reunited under you, not me. Despite my own beliefs about what it is to be a walker of the way, you have shown me that there's more than one in the space of a very short amount of time. And I respect her so much for that, because we've seen her in the Book of Boba Fett when when Din Djarin was exiled. She literally said, "You've removed your helmet. You're gone. Go away." And now Bo-Katan has come in, and the armorer sees not necessarily the error of our ways, but she sees that Mandalorians can be more than this. And I love that. I have so much respect for the armorer right now after this episode. So yeah, the narrative arc is setting up the next conflict. The Pirate King was just a device to set up the Mandalorian's new home and to bring up the new age of the Mandalorian, which I think is really, really, really interesting. The Mandalorians in the Clone Wars have been like a society of people, peace-loving, except for Death Watch. They're not really they're not their old classic warrior ways. And I think to have this new era of Mandalorians to be led by people like Bo-Katan and Din Djarin, I think I think we are setting up to see some fascinating cultural shift in the Star Wars galaxy in this time period. I'm so interested to see what this is going to turn out to become. And yeah, very, very cool. That was my favorite takeaway was the interaction between the armorer and Bo-Katan in that episode. Love the subversion of expectation. So yeah, very cool. And let's talk about what you guys thought in the Discord chat. Let's look at Discord. Right. So here we go. Also, don't worry, streaming mode is on, so none of you are about to be doxxed. So don't worry about that. Right. So first of all, that was Zeb, right? Yes, it was. I mean, I hope I'm on. Yeah, I'm on streaming mode. Okay. It was Zeb. It absolutely was. This was another really amazing part. First of all, that looks exactly like him in Rebels. It was so cool. And I think, man, I love Zeb so much in Rebels. And I loved seeing him in this episode. Just for a small amount, it was so nice to see how the Spectre crew has moved on since the end of Rebels. First of all, though, I must say that I keep thinking of this show as before. I don't know why. Maybe it's because I'm watching the Clone Wars. You know, then I do know why. I think it's because outside of the Mandalorian, I've been watching the Clone Wars. So I keep thinking of the Mandalorian as pre-Empire because there's so much pre-Empire content. But this is now sequel era content. This is after Rebels has already finished. So it was so interesting to see where Zeb has gone and what he's now doing. He's now working for the New Republic, and it was so awesome. And when I mentioned Steve Blum earlier in the stream, this is what I was talking about, because that's Steve Blum, and he just sounds like Steve Blum, but we know him as Zeb as well, and that is the mark of a good voice actor. Is it just me, or does his voice sound a bit more tame than in Rebels? I think that's why I didn't realize it was him. He did sound a lot more calm. And I'll tell you why. I think I agree with Ash. The character's probably calmed down a lot since the events of Rebels. I think that Zeb as a character has mellowed out. And he's not so like fierce and after blood, after revenge and all that stuff like he was before. I think he's fighting for something more than that now. I think he's fighting for something positive rather than something negative. And we love that for him. We love that for Zeb. But again, what I also think is we must distinguish the difference between voice acting in animation and acting in live action. In that animation acting can and oftentimes should be a lot more animated, a lot more exciting, especially because Rebels is a kids show. So The Mandalorian is not necessarily a kids show, one that's like solely designed for kids. So that's why I do think that Zeb has also mellowed out, because for this, the tone of The Mandalorian would be a little bit undercut
if we had someone like Zeb go be his sort of active and like should I say more like his like super high energy self. I like that he was this mellow, but also it makes sense in universe as well that he has that he's calmed down a lot since the events of Rebels. Yeah, I loved seeing this guy. I want to see more of Captain. What is it? Tepper? Is his name Tepper? Because I want to see more of him. I've seen him in a few episodes. I watched like a couple of episodes before I lost interest of Kim's Convenience Store, which is a small show on Netflix about a Teva, which is a small show on Netflix about a Korean man called Mr. Kim, who runs a convenience store in Canada, which is like the stereotypical thing to do. If you're a Korean immigrant, like you open up like if you're like an East Asian immigrant, you open up like a laundromat or a restaurant for your culture's food, or like or a convenience store. That's like the stereotype. And it's all about like how he, who is like a conservative Korean man, deals with the sort of, I guess, social intricacies of Western society. And it's kind of interesting, I guess. I wasn't really super interested in it. I lost interest after the first like couple of episodes, but it was pretty funny when I did watch it. But in that show, he has an outrageous Korean accent. So to have him come on here and be like, I guess maybe this is his natural accent, because I think he is Canadian. I think he is Korean Canadian. So to have him change accents has always been a little bit of an interesting one for me, because he can do them so well. So yeah, I like it. Him as a character is so cool. He seems to be the underdog in the New Republic, someone that we can root for. He's doing things the New Republic doesn't really like. They want to approve, but they don't have the resources to do so. And I think he is definitely someone that we can root for this season on the side of the New Republic, which runs completely in parallel to the other person we saw again today, or in the most recent episode, which is another name I can't remember, but it's the woman who was working for the Imperial Remnant and Moff Gideon, who is definitely still working for them, but has now infiltrated the New Republic. And she turned the Dr. Pershing's brain to mush. I am very intrigued to see where her story goes, but also they are they're complete opposites right now. And I think that kind of tension between the two of them was very interesting to see this episode. All right. Also, this would have 100% been a Cara Dune episode if, if Gina Carano hadn't put her foot in it and been a complete shit. Yes, absolutely. I do see this. However, I like this character. I think he brings a softness to the underdog character. He brings he feels like a genuine, good person. He's not fierce or badass. He's just a good person, And he's just trying to do the best he can. And he's soft-spoken. He's not he doesn't, I don't think he's interested in fame or being the main character or anything. He just wants to do good, and serve the galaxy. And I really like him as a character. So yeah, if this was going to be Cara Dune, then cool, I guess. But I'm glad it's him. I'm glad it's him. Carson Teva, yeah. Basically laying the groundwork for the Resistance. That's an interesting thing. I do think that he's doing that. We have to remember that the New Republic tries to be the main downfall of the New Republic, which is really unfortunate, to be honest, because it unfortunately sets it can create this really weird, flawed argument that you need to have the strongest military in the galaxy in order to maintain order, which is a super imperialist way of thinking, super American way of thinking. But it is unfortunately, the flaw of the New Republic that they did not have any standing army. The point of the New Republic when they dissolved was they decommissioned all of their military ships and they had no standing army. They had patrol ships, they had X-Wings, but they did not have, I don't believe they had any bigger capital ships. They were not warriors, and they wanted to try something a little bit different. Unfortunately, if you don't treat the entire root cause of the system, you will need a standing military. Not because military power is the key, but because the system has messed you up. And that's what I wish people would get into their skulls. That it's not because you need a big gun to make order happen. It's because your system has not been changed yet. I'm going to get really heated about this because there's a comment down below that I saw, and I'm going to, my main take about the New Republic is still coming. Hold on. We'll wait for it. All right, here we go. That end scene, I can't see working anywhere near as well with Cara Dune, because Gina Carano has the emotional range of a turtle. Also just spent it. I don't know, man. I mean, outside of the Gina Carano, controversy and stuff, I feel like a lot of people, I'm not coming after Alex here, by the way. I feel like a lot of people are talking about how I never liked Gina Carano, but it's we did like her. It's only when, sorry, not Gina Carano, Cara Dune. I liked Cara Dune. I thought she was a very interesting character. I'm super disappointed that Gina Carano is such a shit, and just couldn't not be anti-Semitic. But the character of Cara Dune was very interesting. And I don't think that we should shy away from that just because the actor is a piece of shit, Also just spend 10 minutes trying to screenshot this artwork because for me, this is great. This was awesome. Watching this was awesome. It was cool seeing an Imperial thing. And I was sitting there watching this going, who is this? What's going to happen? There was so much tension in this little scene. I thought at some point a ship was going to come out of nowhere. It's this one lone X-Wing in the middle of space with a ghost ship here. It's amazing. I love the concept art credits. I'm so glad that's a thing, and I really hope Ahsoka does it too. That is one of my favorite things about the show as well, is that they have concept art in the credits, so they can showcase some of the things that they were gonna do. But yeah. If Mandalorians did rescue Gideon, are we gonna see some Mandos in the Imperial gear? God, I hope so. Those jetpacks look so awesome, and I do like the helmets. They blend Mandalorians and Stormtroopers together nicely. Yeah, it is those guys. I can't really see it being anyone else, and I just know the armor's going to look incredible. Imperial Super Commandos. Yeah. Also, just the because we are Mandalorian moment. Yes! Paz Vizsla, MVP. What an amazing subversion of expectations that we think Paz Vizsla is this brute that's gone around trying to strong-arm his way through the covert. He sees Din Djarin as this rival, this goody two-shoes who removes his helmet for his kid. And then he realizes Din's value in being a challenge to the way that they've been following all this time. Bo-Katan then comes in, and I think Paz Vizsla realizes the diversity of the way. And this speech that he gives in this episode is an indication of that for sure. These guys are going to look so damn cool. Wouldn't be surprised if the finale was these guys led by Gideon versus Children of the Watch led by Din or Bo. Yeah, I could see that as well for sure. But their armor in Rebels was amazing. I really, really liked it. Yeah. Also, Bo-Katan has taken the war party leader role twice now. Yes, once for taking out the Beast, and the second time for taking out the Pirate King. And I think taking out the Pirate King and taking over that leader role, you can see the Armorer watching her when she does that, especially the second time. And I think that solidifies for her that the Armorer is a good spiritual leader and armorer, but she is not the leader of Mandalore. And I think that she understands that her role is to inspire someone else to take the reins. And yeah, I think this season, this show could be a pretty good redemption for Bo-Katan. A way for her to discover herself beyond who she was during Death Watch. And I like the path that she's on right now. Yeah. Also, I realized that Din's only used the Darksaber once this season. He used it more in 2 episodes of Boba Fett, although that's almost certainly to make it so much more awesome when he uses it in the finale. I think they're holding it off because he doesn't know how to use it. The reason why
I mean, yeah, to me, that's just the reason why he isn't using it, because he doesn't feel confident with it. And also, it puts a massive target on his back. If he's using it, then he kind of acknowledges himself as the ruler of Mandalore. But he doesn't want that. He's not interested in it. So he uses it until he realizes, I'm better with my guns anyway. Like, I'm way more skilled. He also doesn't know how to use it properly. I mean, yeah. Ash and I are the same person, clearly. And generally only turns to it when he's disarmed of his blaster or it's too close quarters for one. Absolutely. Yeah. He needs to ask Bo to give him some lessons. I agree. I want Bo to teach Din how to use the Darksaber. Okay, and then there's this. I think there was like a... I saw this. This is just the Bo-Katan like mythosaur thing. But I think there was something else. Someone quoted Master Allen on a tweet here in Mandalorian. Or was it in the Bad Batch spoilers? No. It was I can't... Did someone put that in here? Or was it like media chat? Media memes? No. Someone put a quote by Alan White from Level Up Savers. Ah, this one. There we go. Okay, we're gonna talk about that in a second. Okay. Been meaning to mention how amazing Paz has developed. His short speeches to show support for Din was amazing. Yeah, agreed. 100% agreed. Paz is a really interesting character. I also think that his support of Din here is basically because he owes Bo and Din a debt he can't really repay. After they saved his son. They saved his kid, so he owes them everything. So I think regardless of what he thinks of Din personally, he's going to stand behind him for the rest of the season and follow his lead on a lot of things. On the end, with that look back when Bo comes out, basically looking to see if Din agrees to let Bo go and not challenge her in the armor, was very telling of how his mindset has changed toward Din. And now I'm just waffling. I basically got my point across 3 sentences ago. Why am I still typing? Stop! You're typing your thoughts. Just delete that part of it. Also, I love that the covert has a talking stick during debates. Whoever holds the hammer can talk. Yeah, Ash and I also laughed about that. Whoever has the hammer can talk. It's the talking hammer. It's great. I love that. It gives this really nice kind of tradition as well. Paz's role here. He has shown quite a lot of growth for being such a background character. He's a good fighter, and he's this fierce believer in the way. But I think that he looks up to Din Djarin. And it's really interesting how they treat each other in the beginning. They fight at the drop of a hat. Because I think that Paz thinks that Din is weak. And I think he's not weak enough to be among the Mandalorians. And I mean, he comments on like how he uses Imperial stamped Beskar to like craft his armor or whatever. Like, he's not a real Mandalorian. And then all Din does, he doesn't engage with him ideologically. He doesn't fight with him with words. He shows him through his actions that he is a Mandalorian. He goes to the homeworld and jumps in water just so that he can come back. And I think all of his actions to Paz, or with Paz around in this season, shows Paz that Din is a true Mandalorian. His actions are showing to him ways to rethink how he's thought about Din up until now, thinking, wow, maybe I've misjudged this guy. And then he saves his son. And that, not just his son, but also a foundling, which is one of the greatest things a Mandalorian can do, is save a foundling. And I think that gives Paz it puts the nail in the coffin of Paz's like disrespect towards Din. After he saves his kid, I think he's solidified that Din Djarin understands what it means to be a Mandalorian, and he may have misjudged him. And I think he moves from being a character who is so proud of his own heritage. I mean, he's a descendant of the inventor of the Darksaber. He challenges Din for it and then loses, meaning that he treats Din as the rightful owner of the Darksaber, which also creates this cognitive dissonance for him because he is a Vizsla, you know? He's a member of the clan that created the Darksaber. Tar Vizsla, the creator of the Darksaber. And on top of all of that, he then sees Din do all of these things for the covert and go above and beyond to prove himself to be Mandalorian with his actions rather than words. And he moves from being this person who thinks that he can teach Din something about being Mandalorian to being neutral about him, to grudgingly respecting his combat prowess. And then here in this season, he realizes, maybe I can learn something from this guy. Maybe this guy is a true Mandalorian, and I could learn how to be more of a nuanced Mandalorian through this guy. And that is why that last gesture means so much. The shot where the Armorer and Bo-Katan come out, and the Armorer just says to everyone, Bo-Katan walks both ways. She's with me. I have told her to remove her helmet. She doesn't say that much, but it is communicated. And she says she's going to go unite the clans and bring them back. There will be a new age of Mandalore. And Paz wants to stop her. He has no idea what to think about this. This is everything that he's ever believed in being counteracted. But then he remembers that you can be more than this. And how does he remember it? By looking towards Din Djarin. And Din nods his head. And Paz goes, okay. Okay, if you say it, I guess I trust you, because you've proven yourself. Wonderful moment for Paz Visitor. Wonderful moment. Okay, then there's this, and this is my main take about this. Hold on a second. I'm gonna go into the browser. Here we go. Okay. Spoiler-free comment. The New Republic has all the same problems as the Old Republic had, but those problems are magnified because there are no Jedi to patch over the cracks. Preach. Preach. The Republic... Anyone who thinks... This is the take that might get me hyped, that might get me a little bit overwhelmed or a little bit energetic about this. Anyone who thinks that... Oh, I was actually going to reference this tweet earlier when reading the book. Oh, yeah. Oh, when we were reading the novelization. Sick. Yeah. And we can talk about the problems of the Old Republic too. Absolutely. Anyone who thinks or who is disappointed by the fact that the New Republic has the same incompetencies and economic and structural issues as the Old Republic did prior to the Clone Wars are the same kind of people who believe that we need good billionaires. It's the same energy as the system is fine. It's just the way that it's implemented that is wrong. No, the system is wrong and requires replacement. Star Wars is... the Republic has always been galactic capitalism. And so, no matter how many new iterations of the Republic you try to do, you have created the system based on greed and corruption, and therefore greed and corruption will always rise. You are doomed to be the same Republic again and again and again and again. And the only thing, as Alan has said here, the only thing that stands in the way of you succumbing to this is an order like the Jedi, as they're supposed to be. And then when the Jedi become too attached to the arm of the Republic, they become too much the police force of the Republic. That's when the Jedi are no longer there in the way that they're supposed to. And the Clone Wars begins and the Republic falls. The New Republic comes in and the Jedi are a myth. There are no more left. Luke is still starting his temple. There are no Jedi to patch up the cracks with band-aids before the whole system inevitably comes apart again. So we are seeing the immediate fall of the system. It was doomed from the start because they tried to bring back the same thing again without changing anything about the underlying structure and the system. And that, when I see other people talking about how disappointing it is, I'm like, yeah,
Yeah, it is. But you should have some introspection about this and realize that that's what we see now too. In real life, this happens. It is happening. This is a structural problem. It's not a leadership problem. It's not a political party problem. The only reason that the Republic's decision to decommission all of their military and standing army forces was a mistake was because they have created a structure and system in which other people will try to seize power. If you create a system and structure based not on that, if you take this system and completely replace it with another one, then eventually you will not need a standing army. Because you will have created, hopefully, a galaxy that is not based on seizing power. It pisses me off so much because people who are like, it just don't... It's such a great... The sequel era of Star Wars is such a perfect example of what is happening in our society today. It is late stage of the systems that we've seen that have been put in place today, where we keep going. We need new leaders. Maybe we need another political party. Maybe we need to enact new laws. No! We need a new system. It's bigger than just a piece of legislation, or a political party, or a prime minister, or a governmental leader. It's a system. We need a new system. Just like the New Republic was doomed from the start because they didn't come together and say, we need a new system. They looked at Palpatine taking power, and they saw that as an incident where Palpatine came in and took power. The people gave him power because of the system, the structure. And I'm not blaming democracy for that, because he manipulated the democracy. He used the economic system and the powers of corruption and greed that would not have been nearly as effective if the Republic was not capitalist in structure, if greed was not rewarded. And that's not democracy's fault. If the system is implemented wrong, then the system is wrong for the conditions it was put in. I would say that capitalism is just wrong in every conceivable, in every conception of it. If a lot of people talk about how, so for example, in South Africa, right? I'm a South African. We have a constitution that is pretty well received by the rest of the world as being a pretty good constitution. Law students come to South Africa on exchange and talk about how good the constitution is in South Africa. South Africa has a nearly 50% unemployment rate, and it's climbing. It's 35%, maybe 40% right now, of people who don't have a job. The amount of people below the poverty line are staggering. Well over half the population, I'm fairly sure. So where is our good constitution? Why isn't it doing that for them? Because the system underlying it is broken for them. It's working as designed. We've had this conversation before. It is designed to not benefit people who don't have and to benefit the people who do have, and to create power structures that allow people to accumulate in unfathomable amounts of wealth. But we laud this constitution as so one of the things that people say, therefore, is that the constitution is great, it's just not implemented properly. No. Go further. It's the system that is wrong at its core. And it doesn't matter how many constitutions you draw up. If the system stays the same, then you are doomed to repeat the mistakes of the past. And that is the story that is trying to be told in this sequel era. And so if you are someone who looks at this New Republic and says, wow, this is kind of disappointing. Yeah, it is, isn't it? Don't you want to take a look outside and see that it's exactly the same? It's exactly the same. Having said that, there is also a moment when I'm going to switch over to chatting. There's also a moment in this episode where Captain Teva goes to the colonel, I think, like the kind of administrative officer with the other like Imperial girl who's working with them. And he says, please, let me do this. Let me go explore. And the guy says, we just can't. We don't have the resources. We don't have the... We have member worlds who need help as well. And anyone who's irritated by that, I think needs to think outside of this individualist mindset, right? Because Captain Teva is one guy. We have the benefit of knowing more than this New Republic official does. He literally is probably swamped. You saw his desk? He's swamped with work. He's probably going to be backlogged for months, years maybe, trying to sort through all of this shit. Member worlds need help all the time. And if they... But that's the point. The point is that the system is wrong. That we're not, like... It's not that they're not... We shouldn't call them incompetent for not going after this situation. Because they have probably millions of others that require their attention. So I get it if they feel too swamped financially and like structurally to send out a patrol ship. Like, I get it. Or like a series of patrol ships. Because they probably are. They're like trying to establish power. They're trying to like sort of undo the damage that was done over 30 years that the galaxy probably never recovered from, to be honest, especially with the rise of the First Order. And so yeah, of course they're swamped. But again, look beyond that and go, why? The structure needs to change. The system needs to be replaced. It's not about how the system is implemented. The system itself is wrong. And that's the thing that needs to be replaced. Thank you, Master Allen, for triggering me and stunlocking me. Let's talk about the Mandalorian. So, I get breaks and all that, but if they were really swamped, why was that bar Teva was at so busy with New Republic officers? Oh, there's also that. So I actually want to, I was actually thinking about that. When they say we're swamped with work, I'm thinking like, what kind of work are you really swamped with? Because I know this kind of might contradict what I just said, but also like at that other part of the episode, that's a good point. I was thinking that, like when we see Zev, there are some people just chilling. Like, couldn't you send those guys out? Maybe they have like other patrols that they need to do, I guess. But maybe? The point is that I'm thinking beyond, and I'm thinking as a governmental structure, there must be a reason for that. However, I will not underestimate the value or lack thereof of governmental bureaucratic incompetence, because that is certainly a thing that plagues a flawed system, for sure. And I think the more people who get into positions of management, not just in government, but also in like just businesses, you start to realize how many people that you think are at the top for a reason have no clue what they're doing. They literally have they're the most incompetent people you've ever seen in your life. And I do think that is a problem the New Republic has as well. For sure. But that's not they're not the first ones to do it. The system is broken. The system is flawed. And they were just chilling. They were smiling and joking around with each playing table shuffleboard. There was no air of things are screwed right now, except for Teva. That's true. And there is that complacency, for sure. So I think I'll add a bit of nuance to my take. At the end is still the conclusion that the system is broken and this is why all these problems exist. But these guys are chilling. And Teva seems to be the only one who's like, guys, shit's going down outside of the Republic. And the Republic goes, yeah, but what can we do? Because we're bound by our member worlds. Maybe you shouldn't have member worlds then. Maybe you should just look after everyone. Not force them. Don't force them, but help them if they need it. It's, yeah. Again, and again, same problems as the Republic pre-Clone Wars. Because the Republic pre-Clone Wars
refused to help Mandalore because they were an independent world when Darth Maul himself was taking over. It was... yeah. He was the only one worried about the rumor of Gideon not making it to trial. I don't think anyone else really cares about it. Because I do think there are some people who think we have so many fish to fry right now. We are just overwhelmed so that we can't focus on one thing at a time. I don't think the New Republic was like resting on their laurels. I want to believe that. I know the pilots on the ground were like chilling and having a good time, but they're just workers. They're not like organizers, you know? So I know that they were just chilling in their base. And that puts Teva as a position of someone who like really cares about things. But again, they are just workers. I do think that they don't really think about these things. And I think that people at the top, I want to say that they are just swamped with so much stuff and backlogged with so many reports that they cannot just focus on one. And that does leave people like Teva to go do the work for them. So, I mean, I guess I'm glad that Teva exists. Okay, hold on. We're going to go with latest. What? Bro, hashtag... Well, should we go just hashtag with Mandalorian? Hashtag the Mandalorian. Maz Vizsla. Watching The Mandalorian, very satisfying, fighty, smashy, crashy episode. This is just space opera, but really great space opera. Perfectly happy with space opera until Andor comes back. Andor was also a space opera, bro. It's dramatic as hell. I think the choreography of the action scenes are really cool as well. I've really enjoyed the way they do space flight, like space combat in this. Super cool. Okay, I mean, fine, I guess. Wait, let's go to the top. Best dad out there. People have been doing a lot of those. Oh, there we go, Steve Blum. It's Zeb Garazeb Aurelius. Yep, that's it. Hell yeah. I also love how he just I love how much they make him look like his actual character in the Rebels show as well. Didn't realizing walking both ways was an option this entire time. I honestly think the armorer reached that conclusion for the first time possibly with that. That's why she was so like standoffish with Bo at first. I think, like Ash said earlier to me when we were watching it, that she was also just processing it, you know. Oh, I saw a TikTok earlier that I don't think I sent, but it talked about how Din stumbles when landing with his jetpack while the other Mandos don't, showing that he didn't grow up with one. Ooh, that's some wonderful attention to detail. We love it. Fun fact 420. Din Djarin and Marshal Cobb Vanth got married in a beautiful ceremony on Tatooine during the time between the end of Book of Boba Fett and The Mandalorian Season 3. Yeah, amazing. Oh my god, it's Zeb from Rebels. Hell yeah. Just realized Din isn't standing next to the Under Mandalorians because he's busy being a dad by blocking the sunlight. That is incredible. Look at that. Just making our buddy Grogu, making sure that our boy Grogu doesn't get sunburned. What an absolute Chad. I'm lightheaded. First the Purgils and now Zeb. Rebel fans finally winning. Absolutely. Oh, that scene was amazing. Oh, they're so cool. There's our boy. There's our boy. Yeah, look at the similarities, bro. Like, look at that. It's the same. Like, the mouth structure's identical. So sick. Oh, this is Mesa Windu. Hell yeah. I want a cold open flashback to right before the Night of 1,000 Tears on Mandalore. Bo-Katan is making battle plans with the rest of her people, and she turns around and sees this staring at her outside. Honestly, that would be pretty tragic, but I want... Look, it's the same... Why? Look. Okay. Some people in the fandom talking about how they don't want to see another Order 66 episode because it's just trauma farming. Then you'll say that you want this as well? I thought that, like, the whole... Like, as long as it needs to serve a narrative purpose, right? So if we just see this and it's like, oh shit, that was awful. Like, if you want to see this, you want to see Order 66, you know? I don't know, man. I want to see this too, but I wasn't someone who was tired of Order 66. Fan art I drew of the Mandalorian dying in a glue trap. Okay. The armorer literally said, Din Djarin, I hardly know her. Friendship ended with Din. Now Bo-Katan is my best friend. Listen, man. Women sticking together. We love to see it. Ooh, the armorer with a darksaber. That'd be sick. Din watching Bo walk by without her helmet on without a single problem. Didn't be like, I had to walk to the living waters and you can just do it now? Yeah. I do think there's going to be a few open questions about, hey, Armorer, what the hell? Why? Mandalorians with the armor's hammer. Shut the fuck up. You don't have the talking stick. Just casually becomes the Mandalorian Messiah. Look, I mean, this is what she wanted. She wanted to lead her people. And I guess she got what she wanted. No, like the armorer forgetting about her one rule after a week with Bo just so she can see her face and then deciding she's Mando Jesus. This to me shows, I think it gives me a lot of respect for the armorer, that she can put beliefs against each other. She can put values against each other and realize which one is more important. And I think, because Din never saw the mythosaur. The armorer has always been someone who's put value in mythos. The mythos of not removing your helmet. The mythos of the mythos of walking the way. The mythos of protecting foundlings. Like all these traditions. I mean, protecting foundlings is maybe a little bit more substantial, but all these traditions that like don't really mean anything. Like why remove your helmet? Why should no one see your face? Because I mean, it has a reason. I'm not saying it doesn't mean anything, but it's like these formalities, these rituals. And then she sees someone's seen a mythosaur. And that's it. She puts one belief against another and realizes that the one that she's held all her life has to be undone now. And she has to test that. And I respect her for it. What is playing in lo-fi right now? Here we go. The armorer asking to speak with Bo-Katan alone in a dark room and essentially asking her to take her helmet off. Like, how else are we supposed to interpret that? I wanted it to be a fight. No, not wanted. I was expecting there to be a fight. I didn't want one. As I've said before, I specifically didn't want one. But I was expecting there to be a fight. Bo-Katan removing her helmet because I told her so. I sleep. Din Djarin showing his face to say goodbye forever to his adopted kid. Real shit. The armor is pissing me off for real. Star Wars fans going for the Mandalorian episode 5 to the Bad Batch finale. I haven't seen the Bad Batch finale. Whenever Bo-Katan and the armor are in one scene together, does anyone get a little bit of a gay vibe? 1000%. I need it. Episode 6 is supposedly 44 minutes long and directed by Bryce Dallas Howard. In other words, we're in for a banger of an episode. If that's not the truest thing I've ever heard, oh my goodness. Still kind of spoilers, taters. I'm sorry. We're talking about like... I mean, it's kind of spoilers. It's like a little bit. But yeah.
But yeah, no. Apparently, the next episode is gonna be directed by Bryce Dallas Howard, who has directed all of the episodes that I like the most. Like all of my favorite. Like if Bryce Dallas Howard is if there's an episode that I watch and I'm like, that was amazing, she's been the director. She's amazing. Season 3 of The Mandalorian really said, so we heard you like women. Much better than season 1, by the way. Aside from Cara Dune, like, we see the only, like, we see the armorer in the first episode, but, like, the only sort of maskless sort of female speaking role, like main character role, is the armorer and Cara Dune. And we see so much more in season 3. It's great. Rebels fans. That was definitely me. Useless ass New Republic. Absolutely. Poor Grogu's seen too much. We saw so much of Grogu in like episode 2, and he's kind of not really that relevant in this episode. I was a little bit sad. Paz, you had me in the first half. Yep, absolutely. Absolutely. There are two types of Star Wars fans. Those who... Oh, it's Danielle. Love her. Those who waited to believe it was him until they saw the credits, and those who still haven't even looked at the credits and have been screaming about it all day. I'm in the latter group. Yeah, me. I only saw the credits that it was confirmed as Zeb, like, up there. Like, I didn't really care. I was just like, that's him, right? Like, it's the same facial structure and everything. Just notice how Paz looked at Din for approval for Bo-Katan being the one to unite all Mandalorians. Because Din has the Darksaber, and that is very important to Paz. And also because he's earned his respect, for sure. Bo-Katan walks both worlds. Yeah, me too. It's great. Zeb Aurelius in live action. We love it. Great job, kid. This was awesome. This, like... she's just still trying to be a double agent, and they're, like, not buying it at all. This season is for us. Absolutely. Zeb syndrome. Instead of brain, there is Zeb like this. This fight scene was awesome. We haven't even spoken about the actual choreography. I love how she doesn't need a blaster. She just throws her hammer at people. It's incredible. Oh. Imagine getting hit with a thing that can shape Beskar. Oh yeah, by the way, it's a gravity hammer. It's a gravity hammer. So, like, imagine just getting hit with a hammer that can simulate higher levels of gravity. It's just amazing. Tim Meadows is such a weird yet strangely accurate actor to cast for the role of the Colonel. I agree. I thought it matched so well. I want to know how that one guy in the doorway didn't hear her whooping butt behind him. I mean, I imagine it was because it was he was too close to the turret. But yeah. Oh, Halo. Oh, the hammer from Halo? Yeah. Anyway, the way Grogu cooed to get Din's attention, like, Dad, you better fucking see this shit. And Din immediately turned to him, was so incredibly endearing. Makes a noise. And he turns. So we're all agreed there's a Star Wars equivalent of a Polaroid of this image printed out somewhere in Zeb's cockpit. Absolutely. Din after securing a plot of land for the Mandalorians to live on. Oh, so cool. The cinematography has been off the chain in this season.
And our children can feel what it is to play in the sunlight. Is probably the closest we're ever going to get to him calling Grogu his son. Aww. The little glance to check if Grogu's doing okay. He always does this. We see little details. We see little details in in the way that Din treats Grogu. We see little details in the way that he like looks after him and makes sure that he's doing okay. He always looks for him. So when there's a moment of tension, Din is always looking for Grogu. He responds to his call immediately. He's always thinking about him. He's making sure that like he's just a dad. Yeah? He's just a dad. I agree Mandalorians broke out Gideon, possibly former Imperial super commander, still loyal to the Empire. In fact, I think Gideon was one of them back in the day. It explains his body armor. Whoa! Gideon as a super commander? Maybe that's why he got the Darksaber. Because he was a Mandalorian. And then the Purge happened and he just kept it. No, well, it says he was ISB. But how did he get there? Okay. All right. I love Pedro Pascal, but I think he should guard his opinion on this. I don't know if he'll get more work if he keeps showing LGBTQ plus support. What? He has enough money to retire. What do you mean? Even if it's not about like getting more work for money, he could retire tomorrow and still be completely fine. But also, have you like taken a look outside? I don't know if I'm a fan of these like of these takes where people are like, hey, don't forget to check your optics, you know? The optics of you supporting gay people is just like not worth the work you're not gonna get. I'm like, what? Entire corporations are making profit-based decisions to come out in support of LGBTQ people and market to LGBT people. Like, and that's based on pure profit because they know they're going to make more money that way. So even from a completely like getting more work framework, like you framed it, that's still wrong. It's just what all this person is trying to be is smart. They're just trying to be smart. Then you clearly don't love Pedro as you claim because his sister is trans. He's been supportive of the LGBTQ community for years now, and look, Star, The Mandalorian, The Last of Us, both thriving, and him and Oscar Isaac are fruity all the time. I mean, yeah, this is very obvious. But like even from the framework that you've done it, like the more work framework, it's just wrong. It's literally just not true. And I mean, this person says it as well. He's literally the leader of The Mandalorian. What do you mean? Oh, some of the stills were amazing. Me pretending like I don't care to see Din Djarin helmetless so it comes faster. Okay, but just hear me out. Nyan Nub, Carson Teva, and Zeb Aurelius. Absolutely, Rangers of the New Republic. Let's do it. So cool. Bo-Katan's arc throughout Star Wars has been about her redemption. I think this is going to be where I end. We're going to talk about this first, because I think she is going to be... I think she's going to be on... This is going to be her thing. Like, this is definitely her thing. Throughout Star Wars, Clone Wars, Rebels, and now Mandalorian. In The Mandalorian, she's finally getting her redemption. She took her first step at the end of the Clone Wars, another in Rebels, and now in The Mandalorian, she's learning to be the leader she needs to be for her people, her clan of 3, and for the memory of her sister. Absolutely. One of the last things that we hear Bo-Katan say in the Clone Wars, as she delivers Maul to Ahsoka, is... I wish I knew how to be anything other than a warrior. Because she realizes how much she's done at the hands of Death Watch. And I think watching her people get sieged by Maul and Gar Saxon is too much for her. She sees what she's done and like what she's been a part of. And she sees that it's led to this, and she goes, what do I do? How do I move forward from this? I need to unite the people. I need to do something. And then she takes another step towards that in Rebels. The Mandalorians follow her.
Something I can't exactly remember what happens in the Rebels show. I need to watch it again. But the Clone Wars is very fresh in my mind. And then she is left alone in the Mandalorian, a shadow of what she was, and she's still learning how to be a leader. She thought she knew what it was in Rebels, if I remember correctly, and she realizes that it's more than the Darksaber. It's more than not taking your helmet off. I mean, not for her personally, but that's what I mean. Like, she walks both ways, as the armorer says. In this series, she will find her redemption, I think. And she's become one of the most compelling characters in Star Wars. It's so interesting to watch her grow. There's an adventure everywhere, man. And that's a good place to end it. Amazing. Everybody, I got to do some Star Wars planning for my session. So, thank you everyone for joining me today. It's been a wonderful ride. Any other comments about The Mandalorian? Any other things that y'all are happy about? Anything we haven't talked about yet? So far, I think it's been okay. I think we've covered everything. This episode was yet another banger. We're setting up for the sort of main bad guys of the season, and on a more personal level, the redemption of Bo-Katan, the growth of other side characters like Paz Vizsla. Also Grief Karga as well. He's getting some interesting development. He's learning what it takes to like run a town, and yeah, I'd say he's been doing a pretty good job so far. And then also, of course, the New Republic setting up into like defining themselves and who they are, what led to the rise of the First Order and the sequel era. It's just been so interesting to see all of this. So thank you everyone for watching me and this stream. Thank you for tuning into the Everything GM broadcast. It's now 1:53 p.m. It is lunchtime for me. I'd like to thank you all very much for tuning in again. Have a wonderful day further. And be kind to yourselves. I hadn't said everything by the time it dropped. We're listening to Miss Me by Louis Cavs and... Is that Maglix? Maglix it is. Everyone, no matter what time of day it is for you, morning, afternoon, evening, I hope it's a wonderful time further. Enjoy the weekend, and I'll see you in roughly 8 hours from now, where we do it all again. Take care. Also, yes, you should. Go to bed, Alfrex. Good night.